What percentage of student bodies?
Here, let me come around that second.
What percentage of student bodies speak American?
So his wife was 2 years.
It's like between 20 and 25% on it.
Yeah.
25%. It's about like Ignatius.
29?
They're a little higher.
Yeah, they're higher.
29%,
What's that?
29%,
29%?
but not necessarily one tribe or another.
Oh, I know that.
Yeah.
Whereas in Ignacio, it's all Southern Europe.
Eric's on it. Eric's on it.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask you if you'd run me that summary report about account.
Did you watch that?
No, I watched it before.
Yes, I do.
It was pretty
I'll have to know.
Yeah, the whole thing, I watched it like, gosh.
Is there softball funding?
Yeah. It's a seven.
It's all right. I think I was in here, like, just trying to be right, I went through that, but I just apologize. Sorry, I have my back. And we'll sign when you get I didn't see it.
So it's on there.
How are you, Chris?
Hi, Jerry.
How's it going down there?
Really good.
Deborah, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Thanks for.
Oh, okay.
I guess I got one thing to do to finish up my outdated.
I thought.
I got your
I
application.
did my financial.
Oh, no. Order, you'll stand and say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, do I hear a motion to set the agenda?
So move.
Second.
Motion made by Tammy, seconded by Cody. Is there any discussion?
Tammy and I were just discussing this, the last policy in G, the KP that gives donations to the schools. That's just an addition to just have the discussion
Did you try?
for first reading next month.
Let's go again, 10 minutes.
Are you talking about all of the policies?
No, just the
Very
bottom,
last
the
one, the
KCD.
KCD.
Casey, public.
Correct.
Oh,
Okay, so
Yeah.
it's just, okay,
and all we're doing on this one is doing a first reading.
I'm sorry.
discussion. Okay.
Discussion, I mean.
But this
Not-
wasn't presented to us.
That one, I don't think it's supposed to be on there.
The KCD was not.
I don't think, I think it's an error. I think that's supposed to be the first reading of that one's supposed to be at the actual
So
meeting.
cross it off.
So.
Yeah, I just got ahead of myself on that.
Because we
Sorry.
actually just met about it last week.
Okay,
So we'll just,
so take KCD off.
So I amend my motion to reflect moving KCD off of G policy for discussion.
Okay, Cody, is that okay with you?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, any more discussion? Call for the question?
Flaherty,
Aye.
Paul,
I,
Hooten,
Aye.
Noise,
I,
Schoonemeyer, Wright,
I don't know, Jack may be zooming in, I'm not sure. He did not answer his phone, but we sent him a link. Okay, I just want to remind you that this is a work session. There will be no discussion, no, we will not be taking any comments from the audience tonight. It will be discussion only, we will not make any motions. We will only be discussing. And then if we need to make a decision, then we will make it at our next meeting. Now, then we set up the room for social distancing, but I see that you guys have changed it. That is, of course, your choice because you're adults, but just understand that we did do this. I do ask that if anybody else comes in, that you use the overflow room. Okay? All right, our first item of business is Norm Ryder. And I'll read.
Paul, right?
All right, yeah. Oh, which one of us? It's going to be Paul that does it?
Yeah, this is Paul and this is Norm. Okay.
Oh, well.
I'm the younger one, he's the older one.
I was reading down, I didn't, wasn't.
That's okay. That's-
Anyway, the floor is whichever one you want, Larry or my other brother, Larry.
Okay. That'd be the third layer. Anyway, what we're going to do tonight is we're going to be finishing up the contract with Pierce Jacobs Casby. Basically, we're going to be having a conversation around the board and the superintendent being a team, and basically helping the team get some direction so that eventually Risha will be here for a long time. Now, if Risha's not here a long time, you know, that's her choice and your choice, but she's quality. And basically what we're going to do tonight is have that conversation, and we're going to be using some processes to help kind of shape that decision-making. And so kind of to start off with, I kind of like to have you go around, tell me how many years you've been on the board and what you do. And also how many children you have, if you have children. Can you do that?
Did you want their birth certificates?
That would be, no,
Okay.
I can look at them. I don't want to guess anything. I do have a question for you, though. You have a family in Colorado Springs that were on the school board in D11?
there's a possibility, but not that I know of.
Okay, I had to ask that question.
Yes, not that I'm
You
aware
must
of.
look familiar.
Yes.
No,
Last name.
in that last name, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, sorry about that. Okay, Chris.
Chris Flaherty, I was appointed January 2020, District G, transmission maintenance lineman with Tri-State Generation Transmission here in town. I have one son, Brady.
Okay.
Goes to school with Lewis.
Okay. Is it Stacy?
Stacy. I am a retired education for 33 years. I have 3 children and 6 grandchildren.
Oh, bless you. Being an educator and grandchildren.
And I've been on the board right at a year.
Okay. Jerry?
Okay, my name is Sherry Noyes. I was appointed my first 2 years. I ran for another 4. My term will be up in November. I am the vice president right now. I do sit on the BOCES board as well. I have 2 children, a 27-year-old and a 23-year-old.
Oh, really?
Went through the school system.
Okay. Sherry?
I'm Sherry Wright. I've been on the school board off and on, all told, 20 years. I have retired from teaching after 20 years. So I've been in education a long, you might say it's my passion. I have been secretary for San Juan Technical College, and I was president and did the movement from a technical college to PCC. I helped negotiate that. And I've been on this board. I've been treasurer, secretary, vice president, and now president. So
Wow.
2
Okay.
children and 2 granddaughters, 1 grandson, and 1 soon-to-be granddaughter.
Oh, wow. Okay. Congratulations. Yes. Tammy?
Hi, I'm Tammy Hooten. I've been on the board, appointed my first 2 years. I was elected this last 2. I'll be up for election in November. I have 20 years, about 20 years of banking experience, so numbers is my game. And I have 4 grown children who have given us graciously 13 grandchildren that are in sporadically of, I represent all school districts in the Montezuma County. And I highly involved in all of them. I am also married to a 20-year military veteran and proud of the service that he gave to our country.
Yes. Cody?
My name's Cody Wells. I'm a realtor, so that's what I do for my profession. I was elected on a recall about 5 months ago.
Okay.
So I've not been here a long time, but I have a 3 and a 1-year-old that will be entering the school system very soon. My 1-year-old actually just started preschool, so.
Rachel, do you want to say anything about yourself?
Sure. What do you want to know?
In 3 minutes, in 2 minutes.
Oh, 2, I'll give you less than that.
Okay.
So I'm Risha Vanderway. I'm the superintendent here. I've been here a little over 2 months in Cortez. And I come from Arizona. I've been in education for the last 21 years. I taught K-5. I was a principal for about 5 years in Page, Arizona. I was a county superintendent for 5 years. Then I was a superintendent for Tucson Unified, and now I'm here. And no kids. Right now about 2,800. And I have a lot of parents and grandparents, but none of my own.
Okay. Paul, you want to talk about yourself?
I'm Paul Reich. I have lived in about an hour up the road for about 20 years. I was saying to Risha that I did all the community forums as part of the search thing, and I learned a lot about Cortez. I thought I knew the community, but until I spent time with each of those groups, I'd served almost 9 years on the Telluride School Board. So I have more in common with you than I do with Norm or with Risha, and was president of the Colorado Association of School Boards for a year. I served with Sherry on that board. So that's kind of my background.
And so I'm Norm Ritter. I've been in education for 45 years. Ran Catholic schools, ran Father Flanagan's Boys Home for about 9 years. Worked with the toughest kids in America, loved it. And found out they were much smarter than I was. And then also I have 5 children of my own. 4 of them live here in Colorado. I have 9 grandchildren, and the youngest is 2 and the oldest is 12. My wife's a kidney dialysis nurse. My children, education, health, all that kind of stuff. And so I've worked 3 states. I've worked Nebraska, I've worked Colorado, and I've worked Missouri. I think there's more in common than there is difference between those 3 states. The fact that they're in the Midwest, but also taxation. There's a lot of similarities, but there is dramatic difference. So I come in with quite a bit of experience. I've retired 4 times and was always pulled back in to be an interim or to help heal the district. My last district was Joplin, Missouri. After the tornado, you might have heard of the tornado, where 135 people were killed. And we had 10 students killed, a couple teachers. And they brought me in to heal the situation and to also rebuild the district. And so I spent some time there as an interim for a couple of years. So that's where I was at. Now I was traveling, literally traveling from Joplin, Missouri to Colorado. I was recruited by McPherson Jacobson to lead their search efforts here in Colorado. And then we partnered up with CASB. So anyway, thank you you guys really bring a lot to the table. You really do. And so that's going to be an exciting discussion tonight. Hopefully we can get this all taken care of in about an hour and 20 minutes. What I want to do is I would like to start with what we're going to do is we're going to start off with kind of a little bit of an icebreaker, but also it helps to think critically. And this is a tough one. And so I'm going to give you 10 minutes. Don't start yet. Don't start. God, I'm going to give you 10 minutes. Chris has already read the directions. Anyway, I'm going to let you partner up for about 10 minutes to see how many of these you can answer. And I have the key here, but every board I work with, none of them want to take the key home. They want to take it home and see if their family can solve the issue. It is pretty tough. But either way, before we do that, does anybody have any questions? Okay. Tonight, we'll start with the icebreaker. We're going to go into talking about the role of the board, role of the superintendent. We're going to talk about communication strategy, and we're also going to be talking about expectations of the two. And so we'll go through all of that, and then eventually we'll set the goals and the expectations and the roles are all pretty well laid out. It's just going to be a matter of you agree or disagree. If you want to add something to it, you can. Because eventually those expectations and those roles will be included with the goals that will be sent back to Risha, and then eventually she'll put together the indicators and the action plans where they are needed. Any questions on that? Okay, so I'd like to have you pair up with each other, maintaining social distance if you could, but still pair up, and go through and read through. I'm going to allow you to read through. And I'm going to give you about 10 minutes, maybe 15, to see how many you can get right. And I'm going to tell you right now that what most that anybody's ever been able to get right is 20 out of 100, or is it 50 out of 50?
Chris, you've already fixed the first third, haven't you?
Yeah, Chris has probably got them all figured out. Anyway, I'm going to give you, let me give you 10 minutes to see how you do. Go ahead, go get it. You have to read it first and all that.
So reading sort of like the answers here. and it's- Jim's part.
Anybody in the audience?
My mind's not relaxed now.
Oh.
They can have all of it.
Interesting.
That's an extra one.
6 years of the 26 length of the.
No, they would have loved it, gone through that.
Okay, houses and a council.
That's how that works. Okay. So I know one.
So 26, L11A, do you know that?
Letters of an alphabet.
People are listening.
No, we're helping them.
I already know who the smart people are here.
You've done this before?
It wouldn't matter.
Oh. I see.
I think, yeah. Quickly.
You're the writer.
Got to, see, we're good. We're on a roll.
Yeah, I would say super sport, but I'm probably. I don't know if it's 77 super sports. Days and nights.
Done this before? Done this before?
No, that's what I'm watching.
Is that days and nights of the,
Topic.
what's that called, the string?
So that's That's right. Yeah.
Busy guy.
I suspect.
Not like a.
No, I get an understanding. of it, so.
You're getting this game now.
Water freezes.
Stars on the American flag.
Oh. You're so good.
We're giggling because we worked all day. Hours in a day.
That's what I was gonna say.
That's when I worked at Iowa, Smart. She's smart. She did 20. Yeah. 20. I tell you. And you could tell she was out for
Start back up here, 7 days.
It's not an intelligence test. It does got to give a little sign. Anyway,
I don't know what that's.
it does.
Zodiac signs for zodiac.
Did you really say it was 21, 2, 3, 4 signed in the
Religious flexibility, routine.
C and that D with a
Underscore time, which is far more flexible.
P and the
Oh,
9 peaks and
So I'm not going to tell them.
no. So,
I know.
5 more minutes. 5 more minutes.
Courts in a gallon.
yeah,
Is that right?
yeah.
Does that sound like good math?
You don't-
That sounds amazing.
no,
Eight rates.
One wall on a one well.
Okay, let's go
No,
back.
you're right.
Is it?
11.
Look at the other side a little bit.
Yeah.
That makes it, no, that's not it.
29 days in February.
No,
February, NA leak. Teamwork.
So let's go back.
AZ.
We didn't get 3. I messed this up.
Oh, 1,000, yeah.
It's 40 days and nights of the. It's right now. 40.
That was a great fun. We're so. I knew it was good.
3 more minutes.
See, we did that together.
Oh, holy cow.
Oh, no, that's the.
Oh, is it spring? break? 7. Before, no, it looks like spring break though. 7. But I guess it's 9.
10 years in a decade. And 6.
5 feet.
Line up at that beginning.
which the.
But all that's,
Yeah, I think it's hard for. them to stay in that.
Inches.
That's why it's part of.
I think so.
300 in a leap year.
Okay.
Yeah.
2, 3, 4, 5,
So I think it's
6,
harder for people. More difficult.
7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13. We're almost.
Where they're going. Superintendent to figure that out.
And public health.
Yeah, sure. But I think they've had to take on much more
2 years between the
tasks and duties.
2 years.
One more minute.
25 cents
It's hard.
in
Oh, it's hard to be.
the bank.
Hard to be a principal. I have my son is saying that it seems like the kids have all.
7 days in
Step back to your-
Yes, Eagles,
I'm hearing that.
10 years in a decade. Don't you think?
Yeah.
26 seconds, 25 seconds.
You can speed it
And
up.
one more, 20 seconds.
3 in a year. 3 F.
Yeah.
It's just like 50. Like,
In a year.
Time's up. All right, let's see how you did as a team. How you did as a team. So how many did you get, Chris?
Oh, no. It'll get hot.
Holy cow.
We're showing off.
20.
Okay,
Pretty good.
20.
good. That's good. What'd you guys get? 23. Whoa, they beat you.
Yeah, but I had,
Yeah, we only got 17.
17. What did two of you get?
13.
13. You said you were tired. Okay,
Has nothing to do with it. Exactly.
Do you have an answer sheet?
I do.
Okay,
You want it?
yes, sir.
Yes.
Because a lot of them don't. All right.
I'm gonna take it home.
Well,
Tell me.
no, but I want this answer.
Okay, okay.
I'm gonna try it some more and then check my answers.
I think I have 5 keys here, so if you want to take them and run them off and stuff to people.
That was funny.
That was
Yeah.
fun.
That was-
You want us to just keep it and then we'll just give it to you later so you don't have to cheat?
Yeah.
Let's do that.
so we don't cheat?
Now, fact that you paired up, you really should divide that half. That's all right.
Oh, no.
That's all right. That's all right.
I don't care about that meeting, I just,
That's,
I just-
I said,
I'm
right.
not giving myself that much credit.
Anyway. As you went through that, it really did open up your mind. Made you think a lot more critically, or in a level of analysis. You know, I'm an examiner of high performance. I basically examine hospitals, universities, also churches, Lutheran churches, Catholic churches. And as I analyze and look for high performance, first place I go to is the leadership team. That's the board and the superintendent. And are they a team or not? And if they're not, if they're struggling as a team, I can guarantee you the whole system's struggling. Okay. And so what does a high performance team look like, or what does it really need to pay attention to? Number one, it needs to be strategic. Number two, it needs to be focused, very, very much, very, very strong focus on what it means to be a leadership team. In other words, a team that's humble, a team that listens, a team that really realizes that the students are smarter than anybody else because they are your consumers. They're the ones that make the decisions to be engaged or not, or to learn or not. And so it's basically learning from them how to best do that. And so really it's an upside down pyramid. So the triangle basically is leadership, humble leadership, strategic focus, and a strong focus on the people you're serving. And so really at the core of all those three things is service. And really at the core of service is humility. And so when you look at leadership across the world, and you're looking at corporate leaders, The strongest leaders are the humble leaders, the ones that basically are able to seek to understand. One of the best teachers I've ever had in my life, and I've had thousands of teachers, was a science teacher in a school of about 2,500 kids in a high school. And he was always the kid's favorite teacher, but he was not a controlling teacher. He was not a dominating teacher, but he was a teacher that basically wanted to know the kids. And so I sat down with him one time. I said, why are the kids so excited about you? Why are your kids performing so well? He says, well, I found out that the kids are smarter than I am, but also I need to know who they are and I need to know what they do. So that's really that third leg. That's where you need to understand your kids. And that's when, once you understand that baseline, then you can basically put together some performance measures that are basically going to give you some really strong targets. So in a nutshell, that tonight, what we're going to go through is the responsibilities of the board members, responsibilities of the superintendent, what the expectations are, and then also some tips for board members. And this is coming from 30 years of work from McPherson Jacobson, working with boards across the country, 44 different states they've worked in. And they found these common things in highly successful teams. And so I thought I'd share them with you. And then you can adopt these if you'd like at a future meeting, add to it or take away as you go through. But I thought I'd share that with you before we do the goal setting. So if you go to page, let's see here. Let's go to page 3 with the role of the superintendent. Good to have common understanding what the role of superintendent is. The role of superintendent is basically to be responsible for setting the standard for ensuring rigorous academic progress. And without a doubt, that's always the number one goal in every team work effort in education. Be active in building alliances and partnerships. Bring the Board of Education in on all partnerships and alliances so that they remain a part of the process of ownership. Be seen as a coalition builder concerned with the big picture. Continually communicate that education is the backbone of our democratic society and of the community. Be visible in the community, at events, in the classroom, roll up your sleeves and join the ranks. What are your thoughts on that? Everybody pretty much on board with those? Those are the ones we find that are very successful. And Risha, I'm assuming you're accepting that pretty well, or walking that path pretty well. Okay, the role of the board. And this is the tough part, especially during this time of COVID, this time about the political arena that you have. I drove your community, wonderful community here, by the way, wonderful community. But there's little signs that you could see that there's some politics going on, and that's fine, that's rich, but you can see it. So in this case, with the board, the role of the board is to articulate the school system goals, be proactive in improving education in their respective community. Number 2, selection and evaluation of the superintendent. We will not get into the evaluation tonight, but that is something you need to pay attention to, aligned with the goals. Adoption of the operating policies, serve their constituency, not just the squeaky wheel. Now, that's one thing that in my 45 years running Catholic schools, and especially the at-risk program, the squeaky wheel, you got to watch for it. And what you do is you just pour water on it and you put a lot of grease on it and just suffocate it. But anyway, so you got to watch out for that squeaky wheel. Always remember, the relationship between the board and the superintendent should be one of mutual respect and confidence. There should be no surprises or hidden information between the superintendent and the board, ever. So if you guys run across something as a board that you think the superintendent needs to know, give her a call or whatever means of communication you have. But also, the superintendent needs to realize that all board members need to know that information as well. Okay. Guys, some has some fruit here or something. Fruit supplies. Anyway. Okay. Oh, it's maybe your desserts. All right. Expectations. What on this one? Here we go. The expectations by the board of the superintendent. Now, here you go, guys. These are your expectations of the superintendent. Execution of policy. This is where superintendents get in trouble an awful lot. The board has the right to expect virtuous execution of policy. All policies, not just those the superintendent is in agreement with. In other words, the superintendent needs to roll out and be loyal to policy. Success of policy. Boards of education also have the right to expect the superintendent to give all policies a chance for success. Too many of my peers are against a policy and they make sure it falls on its face. So board needs to watch that. Decisions. The board has the right to expect the superintendent to refrain from making decisions the board should make. Now that's a fine line, and that a lot of times that's between the board president and the superintendent, board vice president, president, superintendent, however you want to manage your leadership team. But those are always, that's a fine line. And then information, the board has the right to be fully informed. Okay? So I'm assuming you guys have been fully informed, maybe overly informed by Risha since she's been on board. That or she's an overload. Okay. The next one, any thoughts on that one, by the way? Expectations by the board of the superintendent. Is that pretty much in line with what you expect? Okay. Expectations of the board of the superintendent continued. Recommendations. The board has the right to expect the superintendent to make clear and concise recommendations based on available information, past practice, and board policy. Okay? And that's pretty deductive type of reasoning. Sharing. The board has the right to expect the superintendent to share in the hard work and blame as well as the credit. Okay? A good superintendent's going to always make sure that the board gets all kinds of credit. And the board does not get any kick in the teeth unless, of course, they deserve it. I could share a number of times. Anyway, teamwork. I'm sure Paul could too. Teamwork. The board has the right to expect the superintendent to conduct all official business with the board as a whole, not individually. Again, that's a tough one, especially with a board of 7 to 9 members. It's tough. Support. The board has the right to expect the superintendent to be responsible for building confidence in and respect for the board by supporting board actions. Differences of opinion must not be allowed to interfere with the superintendent's basic loyalty to the board. So, any problems with that? Okay, everybody on board?
Everybody on board?
Some boards take these, by the way, and they put them in front of them so that when they're going through board discussions, they see it. Okay, just a suggestion. All right, expectations by the superintendent of the board. You want me now, I'm on page 5. Policy. The superintendent has the right to expect the board to establish and live by a complete set of sound policy guidelines. Support. The superintendent has the right to expect full support from the board as long as they are the superintendent of schools. Boards should employ an individual worthy of their trust and confidence and then provide full support. Unit operation. The superintendent has the right to expect the board to operate as a unit or team, not as individual factions. Those who elect to violate this practice do so at the cost of efficiency and sound administrative practice. It cripples the administration when that happens. Continue. School personnel. The superintendent has the right to expect all board members to deal with school personnel through them or their office. The superintendent has the right to expect any action involving school personnel to be predicated on administrative recommendations. Protection. The superintendent has the right to expect the board to protect him or her against unwarranted demands and excessive and unfair criticism. The board does not need to act as a shield. This simply suggests they are wrong to idly sit by while their superintendent is subjected to the wrong kind of unjust and unfounded public criticism. This is something that for some reason, public boards, I've been on private boards and public boards, this gets pretty testy right here. Evaluation. The superintendent has the right to expect a fair, timely, and honest evaluation. Evaluation must reflect concerns related to job performance and not individual bias. I would suggest that there is a frequent review of performance by the board, maybe a board team, 2 to 3 times a year. But that's just something to suggest. All right, let's go to page 6. Any questions on that? All right. Effective superintendents lead by envisioning ideals for the district and creatively developing strategies to work toward these ideals and solve problems. Setting personal goals and regularly assessing personal achievements, working to maintain their physical and emotional wellness. That one there is something boards need to pay attention to all the time, superintendents. Establishing a personal schedule that maximizes their effectiveness. Regularly participating in professional growth activities. Demonstrating the highest standards of moral, ethical, and professional conduct, which serves as a model for those being led, and which build trust in the leader. Exchanging ideas with others through the use of effective communication skills, especially listening. Okay, continue. Equitably dealing with all members of the district, thus assuring that all are treated fairly and that all students have maximum opportunities to learn. Encouraging collaboration and participation from everyone in the district, including students. Empowering staff to succeed by encouraging goal setting, offering in-service training, and providing appropriate information. Facilitating evaluation of the outcomes of the district to assure that students are learning and that district goals are being achieved. Enhancing the self-esteem of those being led. This is achieved through demonstrating belief in others' abilities, showing concern for their individual needs, and acknowledging their successes and accomplishments. Okay? Any questions on those? All right. So I have yet to have anybody ever add to that, Steve. Maybe you will want to do that eventually, but I would suggest that you kind of put that in print somewhere, the things that we've talked about there. Communication on page 7. As a result of strong communication, the following things will happen. Honesty and trust will develop. Honesty and respect between two parties provides a firm foundation on which to build a strong relationship. A strong district image will emerge. Nothing generates confidence among the public and professional staff more than a united front on the part of the board and superintendent. Teamwork emerges as a rule, not the exception. A good superintendent listens to the board and is able to bring the board together, even though the board many times may be divided. Okay, so the 10 tips for board members, that's up to you guys if you want to use those. I just gave that, included that in the packet. I'm not going to go through those, but I think Cody's the only one that's new. Goes slow in the beginning, you know how that goes.
Oh,
yeah. Parenting's kind of that way, you know, parenting, you know. All of a sudden, though, it's there.
It's not slow.
Yeah, it's not slow, but it's complicated, believe me. Okay. So I'll give you a chance to glance through those. I think we need to read those. Okay, that was a quick lesson. I mean, that was quick. Going over expectations, roles, expectations, communications, as well as tips. Any questions so far from any of you? Kind of set the stage a little bit for us now as far as setting goals. Now is the difficult part. Okay, I included in the packet the criteria that you developed when you hired Risha. And the criteria, really the lead indicators there is education and experience, student achievement, in other words, demonstrated student achievement, leadership skills, communication skills, a visionary, and also has strong acuity around financial management. So I thought I'd bring that forward just to let you know what the criteria was. Brought candidates forward. All right. Any questions on that? It's just something to keep in front of you. Now here's a challenge. Everybody have a pen? And I don't want you to look on each other. You're all by yourself on this one. Okay. What I'm going to ask you to do now, Cody, you're probably the least experienced, but still, as a parent that's going to have children in the school system, you're going to have some high-level interest in this. I want you to list the top 5 goals, not goals necessarily, but things you would like to have the board focused on and the superintendent focused on this year. Top 5 things. And now, number 1 doesn't mean that's your first thing, okay? And after that, after you do that, then I'm going to ask you to pair up again. And then you're going to have to agree on what the top 3 are between the 2 of you. And you can arm wrestle, you can flip a coin if you have to, but I don't think that'll happen. I did see somebody do that one time. But anyway, so the top 3. And then from that, after the top 3, then we're going to ask you to take the number 1 that you selected. And I'm going to ask you to identify things that are going to need to be looked at to be able to meet that goal. And that's called indicators. So kind of walk you through what it feels like. So right now, I'm going to ask you, though, to identify your top 5 things that you would like to have the superintendent and the board, and really the district, to look at this coming year. Okay, top 5 things. Are you typist?
Yep.
Yeah, you want to type them? Sure. Because then I'll guide them. Let's just switch.
Great typing class, Mr. Deal.
I'll let you do it. So
Yeah, I
that
remember.
typing's gone now. Going on. It's good.
Quieter.
Risha, you need to do it too.
Doing it.
Oh, you are? I'm sorry.
I'm not a cheater.
Risha, I know how
I'm a
kids
teacher at
feel.
heart. And that look told me, leave me alone.
No, no.
I was thinking teacher retention, but I think that falls in here. I think that's what I can add that to.
How many do I have to write down?
Hmm?
Can we keep going?
Yeah, you keep going if you want.
That's right, 5
Yeah.
for me, so
Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
we're with health and wellness, so is that also?
About 3 or 4 more minutes. What do you think? So the last one.
Oh, he's- this one.
Large group discussions, that's what it's. If you're finished, you can start clearing out. Identify your top 3.
What's our top, so we identify. So,
How do you do this?
I think,
What?
How do you do this?
I think this one, and then we go with this. Students are achieving the next rigorous.
That's usually the case.
I think two.
Okay, I see.
And that two, and that could be.
Wellness goes in there.
I didn't think so.
It just depends on what
Which will lead to
This could be
So I think this is, we know coming in, there's some damage control.
3, can be 3, 3, 3. Oh, well, that's my list from today. And this has to do with, this is impact aids. This is how we pay, this is how we get paid for kids who live on lands that are not taxed.
You guys come up with an agreement of your 1, 2, 3. Make sure it's complete sentences.
Oh, you can't say that
You
now.
can't have this, students, it doesn't work. I didn't see that.
Let's narrow down to 3.
Do you want to say it out loud?
No, I don't.
Are you sure?
You want these measurable goals?
Yes, well, we're going to put language to it, yes.
Are we making SMART goals?
Yes,
Measurable.
same thing. Smart goals. She said measurable. Pretty close.
Okay. I think this is. Well, we need to put up in the order.
Oh my God.
Okay. Start with that.
I'm sorry, so. I want to get with the hands. Much higher level. Academics from our members.
We do the videos.
Creating a safe environment.
So I have.
Right, that's what I'm saying. That's what it's today. It'll eventually.
Providers.
It will
Safe and
eventually
personal
do,
employment
yes.
environment.
Remember, we're together. But this one, cricket.
The challenges that COVID presented to us. So, but the children might hold all 3 of the answers.
Yeah, it's
So you don't want to know the answer.
You know, I guess I should have defined it this way, but
I really.
I know that a lot of teachers feel unsafe. And I want to be.
That's why
Push this right out. I want to be able to find a way to make sure we have safe environments for everyone. I wanted to write it very carefully.
So what?
You guys are finished?
Looks like you talked about salary
That's salary
retention, so financial management.
Do what?
That's also.
ahead and say this one. Curriculum.
Yeah, that's.
And make
really
a
good.
measurable
Okay.
trust. Teachers.
And within our community.
I have communications, so same thing. Art activity, effective and committed.
That's all measured.
Training,
Especially
Oh,
but indicators.
I want to make sure we have good relations with and leadership.
Really all through. Yeah, I think.
I especially want to make sure we're not like neglecting. We're excellent. Like these things that, make sure we have. Continue to have programs and things. Right, I can get this program.
It's the old part. It's a match.
Those are
I think it boils down to really things are, high achievement. Obviously, financial management, I think what I hear all the time is share retention. It's all.
Yeah, you guys have.
Salaries are, I think, what the salary.
Oh, okay.
Is that what you wanted to do?
Yep.
Okay.
Well, we have.
That's necessarily.
Okay. Does that make sense?
I think it's tough.
Testing.
So.
This is eyes, like that.
Very similar.
Okay, culture and climate.
Are you on the two?
Yeah, so.
So financial.
48
General fund.
and.
I wanted to have to manage ESSER funds.
Culture and climate.
Staff salaries and operational.
Yeah.
By
Sure that's.
You guys have your top three.
Almost.
I think we're almost there.
Health
The future needs of the district sustainability.
and wellness.
The only other thing I think that is sometimes, so it's with financial management, it's kind of,
Board
it seems like there's not.
and
Does that make sense? Like, it's definitely like financial management, typical. But,
honesty.
as far as kind of what I'm thinking is priority. Is, the things that we're lacking. I don't, honestly, I don't like we're lacking on financial. I think I'm like a teacher. Really on the financial management.
And policy.
That makes sense. That's what I mean.
No, proceed. There's no spell check.
However, the teacher salary.
And then, that's okay, huh? And then yeah, here. There's three.
That's where I I guess.
So,
Develop and maintain
so it seems like the financial management is vertical of teachers.
and maintain
Yeah.
Mindset.
clear. I have problem with it.
Student achievement. Student achievement.
That's good.
Obviously, that's, I guess.
That
Not improvement, how are we gonna?
edit, develop and implement
I think another.
systems, procedures,
I think
and policy
Too many other-
surround
we're gonna get here.
It's,
that,
A lot of kids going online
that engage.
and they are still.
Tribal,
You guys ready there? We got three?
tribal,
Are you still debating?
Well, we could go on forever, so.
I know you.
Go on,
That's right.
those are the top three are.
I was listening to you. I thought this would go another hour.
We're board members, I mean, we talk about that.
I'm board member.
and,
Cody does,
and the legislature.
watch out.
That's not- Yeah, okay, so the state.
Okay, I think we have, everybody has their top three. Everybody has their top three.
Okay,
Okay.
And then
Because they
this
can
is part of
ties.
transparency as well, so.
So you're.
And I think across the board, when I was observing,
Did you hear that?
between the three of you, three groups, I don't think you're gonna agree on the first one. That's okay. It's okay, we'll see what. We will, well, then maybe you do. Maybe you do.
As soon as
you walked off.
You changed your first one.
Cody, what's your first one?
One that we have is student achievement, coming out of COVID and through the challenges that we're facing now. So basically keeping our academics high through the pandemic.
Okay, so build a rigorous system that's sustainable. Is that what you're saying?
That's sustainable, that will be able to balance our low performing students still, while still being able to engage our high performing students.
Okay. Walk on water here pretty quick.
We are.
She will
But
be.
still, it's,
Do it all.
so it's an academic goal.
Yes.
Okay. What's your number one goal?
Well, our number one is to increase the salaries to be competitive, so they can have the cost of living, and that lead to teacher retention, which goes into our second one, which is a quality education, because we have quality teachers.
Okay, so yours is human resources, teachers. Okay, and sustaining it. Keep going. What's yours, number one?
Our number one was steer the district in an ethical and professional manner through open communication.
So it's communication with ethics and. So we have.
That's the transparency.
But our other two are your.
Our other two,
Our
your other two.
We have agreement with the three.
With the three, yes.
Yes, because our other two were 2 and 3.
Yeah,
Because we just
were-
managed to get our top three, we didn't really get our
Okay,
top
so-
one.
But if we have that kind of agreement, we don't have to have a number one. As long as we have that type of agreement. So why don't we take this approach then? That Paul's gonna be typing out, and we're gonna put together let's go with the academic goal first, okay? Let's put that language in there first. Okay, so what did you guys put down for you put down,
We put STEM development and overall curriculum performance.
okay, so yours probably was a little more thorough. I'm not saying it's better, but what was yours? Again.
Wow, you're gonna,
I'll say it, then I'll do my inline too.
go ahead.
End line, all right.
Yeah, our tagline. Maintaining a high level of achievement while coming out of COVID. We're on this balancing teeter-totter of making sure our low performing students are still able to achieve while also be able to engage in our high performing students, but not forgetting all those that's in between.
Okay, so really a comprehensive approach
Which
to,
would use STEM and
now
curriculum
let me
upgrade.
ask you this question. When the first statement you made, is it true? Maintain high performance?
Yes.
We have high performance in the whole district?
Oh, crap. No, it's not true.
No, it's not true. It's
No,
gotta
it's
be
not
careful,
true.
but yeah.
Okay,
So we don't want to use the word maintain.
Increase.
increase.
Increase, yeah.
Okay,
Okay, so increase the academic performance of students by improving teacher retention and improving teacher performance through development. Isn't that what you said?
Yes.
But are you getting something put together?
No, I'm working on it. You could.
Okay. We'll let him work on that one. All right? And then he'll read it to us. Paul's
you're really good, Paul.
Yeah, I don't know that it's hard to synthesize.
We haven't heard it yet.
I know.
Yeah,
wait till it's on. Yeah, we're gonna give Paul kind of a time to relax here, but I think the next thing I want to talk through is communication. I heard that from all three of you. And so when we talk about communication, remember, we did talk about communication. We were going through all the roles and the expectations, and then there was communication. And so while Paul's still working on it, do you have a communication plan? The district?
We've been working on it.
Okay, so you're putting together a communication plan?
Yes.
Okay. And so when you look at the needs and you're looking at the community, you're looking at, and Risha, you've been here 2 months now, we're talking communication. Where do you think the gaps are? your perspective?
Well, there's a lot of moving parts. So I think sometimes I lack, the time of the day to, like even, for example, today, I haven't gotten to my 8 o'clock emails yet. 8 a.m. That's what I mean, not 8 p.m.
But that's your community. What about?
No, but it goes out to these guys too. Like I usually, when I respond to a parent, then I send it on to Deb to send out to all of these folks. So I have certain things that I have in place, but I can always communicate more. Like I was talking to Miss Richards about her sending, and we're going to talk about it tonight, but like with all things with COVID and the pandemic and the amount of people that we find out that are quarantining or that are testing positive within our district, their pieces are moving. And so I have to make sure that she's communicating because she's kind of in charge of that area, but with all these folks so that they know every day. So for me, there's so many things that are moving so quickly, like in the last 2 months, just not because I showed up, but just because it's been here. And, staying on top of that and communicating with each of them, because I know you said we only talk as a board, but I don't. I talk with each person, in a different manner, but I do it in different ways. So sometimes I have her communicate, sometimes I have, I've got a staff for a reason and they're awesome and they communicate in different ways with different stakeholder groups. But for me, it's being consistent, it's arming them because like you said earlier, one thing we talk about a lot is these people are elected officials that are voluntary, that are dealing with one of the hardest times that I've ever gone through as an adult. And so I know they're dealing with tremendous pressures. And so for me to support them by arming them with information, I think I could always be faster. And we talk about it all the time, like how are we going to communicate? What are we going to say? What do we want the community to see? Because for me, I care about what people think, but I also have to run a district in a way in which best suits the district. And all of that is communicating with the folks back here and with the folks out there. And,
Okay.
so you want me to stop, I will.
Yeah, you need to stop.
But you shouldn't have asked me.
And
I can keep
thing that
going.
we're doing, is we're YouTubing. We did the Zoom and made it public, and now we have YouTube going, so that we're trying to draw more people in so they understand what we're saying and the direction we're going. And as you can see, we have people that come that care.
Yep.
And so we're trying to be transparent as well as communicating.
Okay. One thing that school districts struggle with is one-way communication. So what I'm talking about here, Risha, is you're trying to communicate out, but really you have a community that should be communicating itself. And your number one communicator, by the way, is your teachers. And so when they're out in the community, that's your communication. And so religiously, what you need to do is communicate with those teachers, because that work gets out. Okay. And so, but either way, I think the key here as far as strategic, a goal for the district, for the board and the superintendent is to put together a communication plan that best responds to the community. Now there's two types of community, internal and external, so that nobody's surprised. So that's a plan that you're going to have to put together and Risha, your personality. The board has a personality, and so that's something you're going to have to figure out as far as the plan is concerned. So I see some eyes going back and forth. Different type of communication there. So anyway. So I stalled there, Paul. Did you get the first one?
Yeah, I can give it a shot. And it's kind of taking off what Tammy had started with. Build a rigorous and sustainable academic system which will increase the academic performance of all students in the district to meet the needs of all of students at all levels. We could wordsmith it a lot, but that's kind of what I'm hearing is, you really want to,
Good job.
you're not there yet. You acknowledge that you're not high performing, so you need to develop that, and you want to meet students where they are today and making sure that you're getting all the students from here to here and everybody in between.
You want to become a
Read it one more
district.
time.
Sure. Build a rigorous and sustainable academic system which will increase the academic performance of all students in the district to meet the needs of students at all levels. Again, it probably could be better wordsmith, but
Sure.
There's a ton of indicators there. Key thing there, Risha, is to establish a baseline so that you can work from that baseline to improve. So you can establish some pretty strong baselines in that whole piece right there. So,
Because we're still gonna get to tweak these.
oh, yeah, it's quite a bit before you approve them. Okay, so now, everybody okay with that first goal? Everybody on board? We're not voting, consensus here, head nods, okay. All right, so you just started the second one already?
You kind of said it, develop a communication plan that is responsive to the community, both internally and externally.
Yep,
Good, yes.
it's good.
Pretty simple.
All right, let's go to the third one. Let's see, what, you said, that-
Human resources was,
yes, human resources.
was the third one.
I'm going to tell you right now, there's 7 categories of high performance. I gave you the 3. That's what you call the motor high performance, okay? Leadership, humble leadership, strategic focus, and response, paying attention to your people serving. 4th one is human resources. And basically, what you're looking for with human resources is sustainable, but they have to be talented.
Right.
A talented teacher is much better than an experienced teacher. Okay, but they gotta be talented. And it's hard to find those really talented teachers. But experience is very powerful as well. So to keep a teacher in the system is really important. So what you're talking about here as far as 4th category, 5th category, by the way, is data. Make sure data, making decisions by data, not by emotion. So anyway, let's go back now to the 6th is, of course, the cycle. So we're really right into the human resources. So did you put some language together?
Well, I wanted to hear what Sherry, because Sherry, you started it off by talking about retaining,
Well,
raising
Yeah, and-
salaries, retaining staff, but
and I did my shorthand, but I put down increased salaries to be competitive with surrounding area, plus cost of living, which will lead to teacher retention. But I agree that a talented teacher is worth 5 experienced teachers.
Yes. Now, salary piece, is that enough? Are we looking at climate and culture as well? Is that an issue?
I think that's really good, according to the reviews, right?
That's what I have.
Exit the reviews, we have.
That's
really
what I
good-
have in mind.
Was that
The
our?
one that, no, the one I developed.
You have climate and culture?
I had create and maintain a culture and climate defined by health and wellness, support and honesty that is driven by policy and procedures.
So that's staff retention right there. You get that
Yeah.
going, you're gonna have,
But it's everything.
it is, I know, but that could fall under human resources though.
Mhm.
So I think we need to make it more general, that 3rd one, to include the wellness and the healthy culture. The biggest thing about a high-performing system, especially education, is you gotta drive out the fear. You see, you gotta create an environment where there's heavy trust. And so when you have fear and blame, really at the core of your system, your heart explodes. You don't have a heart anymore. It's gone.
Oh,
And so basically your system destructs, it self-destructs. So the best thing to do is to build that trust. And so that's why human resources is probably better to define it that way. And that teacher retention is part of that. That's an indicator of human resources along with the culture. So you're going to have to do surveys to measure satisfaction. You're going to have to measure satisfaction.
look at my HR person, just so you know.
Oh,
She's right there, so.
okay. Understand that, right? Anyway, satisfaction. So measure but your satisfaction, by the way, you got internal, external on the communication plan. You got to measure that as well in that 2nd goal. You know, and so that's done by satisfaction.
so I'm struggling a little bit beyond. But I'd kind of like to hear, do you guys have thoughts on,
Yeah.
on this? On the human resource one? Was that one of your top?
Yeah, we
Stacy?
did staff retention through salary, professional development, and implementation of the 4-day week.
That'd be our 5.
Staff wants 40 weeks, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
I think
come up
health-
quite a few
health,
times. There's
wellness.
some roadblocks that.
It's kind of interesting. Communities around ski areas, staff love 40 weeks.
We're the only school district in this area that has a 5-day week.
Is that right?
So that's what 5-day week.
Okay. Now do you have it?
Yeah, but I don't like it. So recruit and retain highly qualified teachers through the development of a healthy culture. And then I kind of evolve into that salaries and professional development. Because again, it's like salaries is a bigger issue, you know.
Can't those be
the whole
indicators?
Financial,
That would be the.
I'm sorry?
That would be an indicator.
Right, that's more of an indicator. So I
think
don't necessarily want that in that goal.
the goal is to build an enriching
You know, when we lost that exit surveys that we had, you know, a lot of teachers that are leaving because of salary, but in that same survey, we're saying that the culture is good.
Right.
Wish I could have stayed.
Interesting.
That is
I'd like to stay, but
I couldn't afford to.
Well, especially now with what's happening with local prices of homes. Now it's even more. That was pre like the big,
Okay, so the culture is, that's self-reported by teachers then?
yeah, the ones that resign.
Okay,
How about something like recruit and retain highly qualified teachers through developing a healthy culture and building an enriching and rewarding work environment? I'm sorry?
it's just, it's all staff.
we'll work on it.
We have to sharpen that up a little bit. I think it needs to be more general around human resource.
Yeah,
Raise that.
I agree.
I'll put some language in there.
Build on that.
Yeah.
Okay, if you're comfortable with those 3 goals, Paul and I will work on that 3rd goal. And then you guys are eventually gonna edit it, fine tune it, and then you're gonna approve it, and then we'll put indicators to it. Because they're all measurable. Okay. Is there something missing? That's the question I have to ask. Is there something missing that you really need to focus on as a team? Is there something?
Well, I think one thing is our team will be changing here shortly because we do have an election. And so, you know, we know the characteristics of a team there, the characteristics of teaming is norming, forming, storming, and performing. And when you take out one member and bring in another, if you take out 2 members and bring in another, it changes the effectiveness of a group. So we're going to have to work hard now to do the hard work we have to do. But then we're going to have some onboarding.
And we'll have at least 2, maybe possibly 3.
Right, and so I think that's just something we want to be cognizant about down the road of, what do we like that, what do you guys like right now? And what are things that you want to keep as kind of like the signature of, Montezuma-Cortez School District RE1 Board of Education? And then how does that translate as we onboard people? And what does onboarding look like? Because you guys know, I mean, listening to your story, half of you have been appointed. And when you're appointed, you're like thrown into this system of education, which is actually quite hard to understand. It's complicated. Like there's a lot of moving parts. There's, that's what's so much fun about what you do, even though it's for free. There's just so many moving parts, it's really like, you can really geek out on what it is to run a district. And so what do we need to do to support you guys as we get, the new people so we can get from storming, norming to highly performing as quick as possible?
And the good news is one of the people that will be moving into our board is here tonight, listening to this. So they're not going to be completely new.
Well, really, all board candidates should be meeting with you and share.
Right.
And that's really part of the orientation for the election.
Well, we also have some trainings that
Yeah.
it's throughout the whole state with,
Yes.
that they'll be doing just to help
Our region.
inform the board. Just to give them a different lens.
Now, the
So-
last 2 categories, I gotta give it to you.
Oh.
Okay, as far as high performance. Number 6 is constantly changing. PDSA, planning, doing, study act. In a given classroom of a high performing teacher, that happens at least 10 times in an hour, at least 10 times, okay? A high performing student in a classroom is changing almost every 10 minutes. See, so that's when you have a high performance. And the 7th one is looking at the results. Are you getting results? Because you can have a system that doesn't produce results. So anyway,
Can you repeat 6?
Oh, yeah. First one is global leadership. Second one is strategic focus. The third one is focus on your people you're serving. The fourth one is human resources. Fifth one is data. The sixth one is PDSA, planning, doing and studying, taking action, and that on a regular basis. And then the seventh one is the results. You look at the results. Now, the board should be looking at the results 4 times a year of these goals. So anyway. Any questions? What Paul and I are gonna do is, I'm gonna go home with these on my computer. I'm gonna send them to Paul. Paul and I are gonna fine tune them. We'll send it to you, then it's up to you to take it from there. I would like to have you guys send me the indicators so that I can challenge you, make sure they're measurable. And that way you can, look at the results and get results.
And we'll send that, we'll send that out to you guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just that we're looking for indicators. So if you don't mind, after you word sculpt, just get it over to me too, and then I can send it out. Do you want the indicators prior to your word sculpting, or do you want the indicators once we get this?
After we get it, when we shape it, we're gonna be, like, the first one is definitely in place. All we have to do is put indicators there. The second one needs a little language, but not much. The third one's gonna need some shape. So I think there needs to be more resources, but what I'm reading here, so. Full ethics, because ethics is critical, as far as high performance, so. Okay, any questions? Anything you would have done different tonight? We did this in right in an hour, a little over an hour. Usually it takes 2 hours.
Oh, perfect.
The first part, I usually take about 40 minutes, but we did it in 15, so. Because I know you have an audience out there that wants the other part of the agenda, and I don't want to steal your time, so. Okay, I appreciate it. I'm working with you guys, and we will make sure this is done. By the way, I'll come back, no charge. If you need anything as far as high performance, any kind of work as far as a board or with staff or anything like that, I can do that for you. Okay? So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Norman.
Yeah.
Want to save that?
How do you want to say it? Yeah.
I'll save it.
Yeah. How you want.
I better say it.
Yeah, you better.
Yeah, I better say it. Yeah.
You need me to get her? Liz, you need me to get her?
Oh, she's starting.
Is Jack on?
Oh, was Jack on?
No.
Oh, okay. It's been great to have him as part of this conversation.
Help with
Pointer. Hey, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
You're welcome to stay.
That's all right.
See you in Madison at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, so I think I'm gonna pass. Thank you.
It was good seeing you.
We're only gonna go till
Nice meeting you,
midnight.
Norman.
Nice to meet you. Drive safe out that way.
Send that lady my,
Drive safe out that way. Jeremy.
I'll send that lady my name and
I will.
number. please. Thank you.
I'll call her.
Just so you know, the battery light is flashing.
Yeah.
It's okay.
brand new batteries.
Okay, good. All right, so for the COVID update, I thought I'd put it in visuals so you could see it. So I went on to the CDC's website and just basically cut and paste the first few slides. So you'll see that we are down the row a little bit, so far down you can't see it, but the total cases in Montezuma County since March of 2020, which is a year and a half, is 20,045. The most is not showing there, but El Paso County, oh yes, it is. El Paso County has 83,578. So you can see we're one of the smaller dots down in the corner
of cases. Of course, our population is a lot less as well. Total deaths in Montezuma County. We're also fortunate in this area, not that one life is valuable, I'm not meaning that in any regard, but we don't have near the numbers that some of the counties have. But since March of 2020, we've seen 30 deaths. And I want you to note down below that you can't read, it says COVID may or may not be listed as the cause of death. So a lot of times there's comorbidity and they happen to have COVID as well. So in Montezuma County, we've had 30 total. We haven't had a recent death in quite some time. So what was an anomaly and why they were putting so many of these reports on is because this is the 2-week total, you'll notice, from August 20th, 2021 to September 2nd, 2021. And this is really attributed to the startup of school. So if you'll notice, almost every single county in the state was at what they call the very high level of having more than 100 deaths in a 7-day total, in a 7-day running.
Deaths.
Yes?
Not deaths, cases.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for clarifying that. Cases. So the infection seemed to spread. There's a lot of attributing factors to this. One was the startup of school, but a lot of these cases are children, and in their home setting, they're not getting tested. They have symptoms and nobody, they just attribute it to a cold. But in a school setting, often nurses will do a screening. They'll check them more thoroughly. They'll ask the parents to get them tested, or they will test them with the school's rapid test. So a lot of the numbers were escalating once kids came back to school. And so this is the most recent visual of the cumulative incidence rate. So the 2-week cumulative incidence rate includes new cases reported in the past 2 weeks per 100,000 people.
Do you mind if I add something?
No.
And I was also reading some of the news this morning, and nationally speaking anyway, they're really worried about what that Labor Day just passed. And so in like 4 to 5 days, we'll see whether they're, we used to call it like the impacts of any of the holidays that are coming up. And so, that's the one thing that we're keeping an eye out for, just FYI. Thank you, sorry.
I do have a question real fast. If somebody's flight from life to another county, what total does that count towards? Is that the Montezuma County death, or is that?
We still count it.
It does.
Mhm.
Just want to throw that.
The honest answer is both counties count.
Yeah, that's what happens.
So sometimes we're double.
So the current epidemic curve. So this is the status for each region. And again, this is from August, the past 2 weeks. Where'd my thing go? The past 2 weeks, it's good. The curve, and you can see that we are in the sustained decline. So the southwest corner of the state is actually showing a decline in the epidemic curve. And so just to give you it says the epidemic curve status for each region provides a detailed view into the burden of illness in each region and the trajectory of new illness. Regions are categorized according to the total number of new cases in the past 2 weeks and the current day's change in daily case counts. Regions with elevated incidence have had more than 10 new cases per 100,000 in the past 2 weeks. So we are actually in a sustained decline in the state, all of the Southwest region. Also in the Southwest region, in the last 2 weeks, so the 2-week line, the 2-week line, you can see the dotted dashed line there. So that's from August 21st to current, September 5th. And we've actually been seeing a decline in cases in the Southwest region. So the top line shows the daily incident rate. The bottom line shows the change in the slope of the, can't read it, trend line. So I can't read what that word is. Anyways, so we are in a decline in this area, and the green below the 0 is a positive element of that. But the decline we can see at the top for the Southwest region, we're actually coming down since the months before school started, or the days before school started. So the Southwest region is actually in a state of decline. So for us here at Montezuma-Cortez School District, RE1, so from the time school started until yesterday, and today we had no cases, no calls from public health, so this is current as of today. And I'll show you a better way to see it. I just wanted you to see that we've stayed under 20 basically in any positives, and then any 1 week. And then our quarantines, we had a big quarantine in the 2nd week, and I'll show you those numbers specifically. Here are those numbers. So student positive. So the first week we had 7 students positive in that first week, 1 staff member. We quarantined 5 individuals the first week, and we closed no schools. And the reason there were only 5 quarantined is because some of those students came in with symptoms and we sent them right back home. They got tested. They didn't have any close contacts. So the 2nd week, we had 9 students positive, 1 staff positive, and we quarantined 138 students. And that does not count the school that was closed, although some of those students were already quarantined, so they are counted in the number. But we closed, remember that we closed the school not due to quarantine, we closed it due to staffing lack of staffing, and the fact that we really needed to disinfect that building because it was just spreading too quickly. And it's a virus, it's contagious. So we did quarantine 138. Those 9 individuals who tested positive were in school with symptoms. And so we had to get all the close contacts around them. And it turned out to be 138. This 3rd week, actually, this is week 3 through 9/7. This is through today. So over the weekend, over the long weekend, we did have calls every day. So we had 10 positive students, 1 positive staff, and we quarantined 44. That number has actually gone down. Before I got in, the nurse showed me that there were 8 students who were actually vaccinated. So that's gone down to, what is that, 36? Mm-hmm. And then no schools closed. And so since school started, let me just summarize by saying we've had 26 students testing positive, and that is 1.1% of our 2,359 students. We've had staff testing positive 3, that's 1.08% of 277 employees. We've had 187 quarantined and 1 school closed. That 1 school reopened today. We currently today have 20 students quarantined.
We can send this to you guys too.
Yeah, we'll send it to you. We have 1 that was hospitalized.
Was that a student?
It was a staff member, and we have none currently hospitalized. So they're out of the hospital recovering. So 98.9% of students remain negative. 98.98% of staff remain negative. This does not account for our charter schools. If we counted them in our enrollment, it would be, the percentages would go down, but it's, our total enrollment with charters is 2,707. So the summary continued as of today. 4 students are positive for COVID, all are asymptomatic. None of these cases are traced back to school. They were all from family members or outside of school. One of the students who was positive was in school the day before he was tested. So we have 20 students in quarantine due to close contact at school, and 4 additional students are quarantined due to a family member positive. That's a summary as of today for the last week of what we have. A couple of notes for you. We found a need, Dr. Vandewey and Jacqueline Hall, our health director, and myself met, and there was some confusion about different language between district information, county information, state information. And there was confusion among our parents. Well, what are we supposed to follow? What are we supposed to do? We had a lot of pushback on recommended and should. So we would like to take a more consistent position in order to be very clear and, more importantly, combat the spread of the virus. On any one given school day, the largest concentration of people in our county is in this school at any given time. So there's no other meeting place where there's more people together than in this school district. So we're just, the consensus was in that meeting that we need to take more consistent position on that. So it would be easier for us to mandate the quarantine for any close contacts and not use the CDC and public health language of recommended or should. Now, we can't change their language. We can't change the letter that goes out to families from public health. But we are proposing a change in our citizens guide on page 7 to state quarantine and isolation procedures. The district will, and what is in red has been added. The district will require quarantines of a minimum of 10 days for any individuals who are deemed a close contact of a COVID positive person. We will continue to, and then follow the Montezuma County Health Department guidelines for quarantine individuals who are not COVID positive, but have had close contact with someone who is COVID positive and we're not wearing a mask, and isolation individuals who have tested positive for COVID. And deciding to implement a temporary class or school closure and/or in determining when to return to class or work back in-person learning. For more information on Montezuma County Health Department guidelines can be found on their website. And then when parents are notified their student is a close contact, they will be expected to follow the district guidelines provided. Quarantine students will have a return to school date that must be honored. If a quarantine student comes to school, the parents will be called and asked to pick them up or see that they get safely home. If a parent refuses, the school is directed to have the student in isolation for the day and working on their online studies. And the reason that the group that is proposing this decided is most of our cases that have come happen when close contacts come to school with symptoms. And so then we immediately have a ripple effect. Our effect is very small right now. And so it's the board's decision whether these changes go into the citizens guide or not. It's not that way online right now. But it is a proposed change. So that's something to think about, and you guys can talk about it now, and you can't vote on it, but you can talk about it. It's something that they're considering changing. Also, as far as communication goes with the board, Risha had given me the directive to send her an update on Wednesdays. So that would be like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, then an update midweek, and then Thursday, Friday, Monday, because things happen over the weekend. So to give her one on Wednesday and Mondays. So that's what I was following, but she mentioned today that the board would like to have more information. So, and possibly daily updates. We don't always have things daily, like today we didn't. So I'm happy to do either one. I have been sending my updates to Risha and Deb and Jacqueline Hall, but I can start as well sending it to the board. But I need to know what your desire is on that. I'm happy to do that for you. And I'm sharing our consensus of our thoughts. So I'll answer the questions based on the consensus of the health professional and our superintendents.
And we weren't sure, so when I was talking to Ms. Richards, whether you all would prefer an email or a text from her, and it would just be, you know, if you want to know like who's quarantining, how many kids are quarantining, how many tested positive. If you don't hear anything, it's because nothing has happened or something. We just wanted to open it up to you all to see what you wanted. and what works most effectively for you. Because we're pretty much in it so much that it's,
Yeah, and I.
Sometimes it's a challenge.
Once we hear of a case, then there's like a flurry of communication that has to go out, and adding the board to anything is not an issue. I just want to remind everyone to keep their eye on the ball and realize that most of our kids are hungry.
What's your pleasure?
Well, I guess I would just, I would be in favor of if you're sending something out anyway, if it's just as easy just to add us to that email list, then we're getting the same information that's going out to everybody else, and so we're kind of.
Or just in a way
of knowing what's happening.
I don't do specific case information except to.
Yeah. there won't be any names on it or anything yet.
No, we don't, no, we don't.
Right, right. I just want you to know, it'll just be numbers, yeah.
No, that's fine. That's
So do you want the school, like one student from Kemper was sent home today?
That's how I do.
And,
Yeah,
you know,
I
and
think
we
that-
quarantine.
Yeah, that would be
whatever. Is that what you want?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of like what we had last year.
Or,
Yeah.
Just a quick note that there was a positive case at Mesa. We had to quarantine the 4th grade class, or a 4th grade class. They will be back on such and such a day.
Chris, is that okay with you?
Yeah, I think like a beginning of business day update, if something, and if there's no news, then
If we don't get anything in there, that means goodness, then it's like today and there's nothing.
Chris, did you say beginning of business day?
because I mean,
For the day before.
for the day prior.
I started to say, because we don't know.
I know.
Because you're so busy,
Yes.
if it's happening on Monday, you're sending out emails to everybody, doing everything you have to do, there's so much that you have to do there, but plus you have your other duties as well, so like the next morning, once before that day starts to wind up on you, just send out a quick.
Yeah,
change
that works.
the day before.
and then that would also include us getting the emails that you send out on Wednesday and Mondays? Could
It's
that,
just accumulation of what you're getting, but I can do that.
Yeah.
I would like
I
that.
would like that.
Ms. Richard, if you send that to me, then like you have been already, I'll forward it to them.
You don't necessarily have to add us, just send it to them and show.
Ms. Richards, do you know if we've gotten the rapid tests from the state yet?
No, we haven't yet. I had to, they didn't receive all our paperwork, so I had to resubmit that, and I did that last week.
Yeah.
And so now they'll be it out, but.
I guess my question is, and it would even, because of the rest of the districts, they're kind of going a different route. And seeing how one of the biggest issues is the quarantining, all these kids that are quarantining, the amount of kids quarantining for the amount of kids that are affected. If we couldn't do something, I mean, that's one way to help with the quarantining, because if I'm understanding right, some of the kids aren't really getting an education while they're quarantining.
Right.
It's not been, I mean, there should be a plan and process, but it sounds like some of the kids aren't getting an education. And especially when they are feeling well and they're missing out. So I'm saying, like, I'm trying to weigh all this. If there's a way that we can decrease the quarantining, I mean, I would be in favor of completely, kind of like they do in MCSD, you know, unless you have symptoms, or if you take a test or whatnot and show that you get to go back to school. Because I'm curious how many of these kids are being quarantined actually had it.
Yeah.
I mean, the ones that are close contact quarantining, how many of them, it'd be interesting to know the numbers of how many of those kids actually contacted it.
The rapid tests that we are hopefully going to get sometime, can we give it to and I don't know, I'm just trying to walk the middle ground. Can we give it to the kids that have been in close contact, and if they're negative, they stay, and if they're positive, they go? I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to.
We can't do that because one, they have to have parent permission.
Yeah.
And two, if they have, if the results are supposed to be, when we think a student may be positive, we use it. for symptomatic kids with parent permission, but it's not supposed to be for asymptomatic. Even if it were to come positive, we don't trust those results.
I started to say they're not
Test.
accurate, yeah.
So we can't use it in that way. But just so you know, I have limited the quarantine numbers because when you study the close contacts and you look at the seating charts, it really only has to be the front, the back, the sides of each student. And the second week, we kind of had a rash of, we weren't ready for it because we weren't expecting to have to deal with COVID right away. I wasn't the one making that decision, but we did quarantine some full classrooms. And so we don't have to do that full fell sweep like that. We can limit the number to actual close contacts. And that's what public health advises. And every time we have one, I ask multiple questions and ask them, is this correct? This is what I'm about to do. Or is this correct? Is this accurate? Because I'm not a healthcare professional, so I don't want to make a mistake. So I take my time before I actually make that decision.
Yes, thank you. On the language you had on the last slide where it said minimum of 10 days, I know in some of the workplaces, those employees can, after 5 days, get that test, show that they are symptom-free, they don't have it, then they can return to school. Isn't that some language in our guide now?
Yeah,
Or can it?
it is in our guidance under.
So maybe it should be something on that in parentheses there, minimum of 10 days, and then parentheses, whatever.
If you test negative.
If you test negative after 5 days.
Two is just getting the results back as fast as
I
we
know,
had hoped.
know.
And so that's just one of the other challenges, because there's that lag that has just slowly started again.
Sure.
Which wasn't here for quite some time.
And if the close contacts, if they are wearing a mask, they are not counted as close contacts.
If they're both wearing masks.
If they're both, okay.
Yeah, that's.
But you know what, that may not be true anymore because our public health nurses, 3 of them, have told me that is no longer in effect. So I have an email out to Bobby Locke to ask for confirmation of that. Because now people with vaccinations are getting breakthrough virus and people both wearing masks, somebody's getting the virus. So I have an email out to Bobby, but all 3 of our public health nurses have told me that this weekend or last Friday, that is no longer the case. Because I asked them now, if both parties were wearing a mask, do they have to quarantine? They said that's no longer in effect. So things change.
I would just like to see us keep the quarantining down to the least amount that's possible. That would, like I said, if we had numbers of the kids that were quarantined that actually had it, I'm guessing that would be fairly low. And we're depriving these students of their education based on our recommendations, I guess, of what you would call it, or our policy that we're putting in place. And I just, like I said, if these kids that have missed out, and like I said, not full on an in-room classroom, but even out of class time, they have.
This isn't policy yet. You'll have to pass that.
We'll have to vote on it.
I can add the language Tammy's asking, although it is in a different place in the citizens guide, this is still a good place for it to go. I agree. I can give them all of that information. But also remember, some of the kids quarantined in those numbers are actually quarantined because somebody in their family has it.
Okay.
We had a lot of students who were quarantined from Manila, who were home and or not quarantined, their school was closed. And while home, they became a close contact to a parent.
And they never came to school.
So
Like some of these, they've never come to
Yeah.
school, and we didn't have to quarantine anything because they were never here.
But I'm like,
But they are
Sherry,
counted in our quarantine numbers.
Yeah, I would love to know the number of kids who have actually, once we've quarantined them from school, we've quarantined them. And they have not become or have become COVID positive. So
Trying to
one
create
or
a
the other.
record.
I'd like to know those.
I can tell you that it's 0.
Okay.
And I'll confirm, but in our tracking, we keep track of that. And I can tell you that none have contracted COVID
From school.
From school. We have no cases traced back to
That was
school.
up there.
Okay, all the more reason why I'm kind of now, I'm like, you know, we don't know what they're gonna try to do later. I'm all for giving them as many freedoms as we can right now, without being mandated to do some things until, you know, we are completely mandated to do certain things. I'm saying we need to give them the freedoms they have now, because we don't know what they're gonna push on us down the road, so that they can get their education.
But remember, there's zero because when they quarantine, they're not by each other.
Right.
So, but yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to know.
I think it's reasonable to say, you know, if you have somebody that's close contact with someone who's positive, that once that close contact has acquired a negative test, they can return to school. And if there's a lag, there's a lag.
Yeah.
There's,
That's
you know,
the
At least
rules now.
Yeah.
We can add that.
Because, you know, like you said, the nurses saying it's changing, because, you know, the vaccines aren't cured. The vaccines are supposed to try to keep the hospitals from being overwhelmed with people that need hospitalization because they get COVID. It's just supposed to make their symptoms more acute, or faster, you know, side effect, long lasting side effects from it. That was the purpose of it. So there's gonna be breakthrough cases, there's gonna be masks aren't gonna stop everything, that's down on things, it's kind of like.
And it's unfortunate that our kids that were in quarantine, and I don't want to take away anything that you're saying, Chris, but we have side effects of those kids that are quarantined that are healthy,
Yeah.
right? And for whatever reasons, and we're all getting those emails from parents who, my kid was quarantined, but this only one teacher reached out to me, and I'm talking about high school level. But where's the other 6 or 7 teachers? That kid is wanting to succeed, and we are trying to increase student achievement. We're kind of,
Yeah.
this doesn't make sense.
No, it's tough because.
It is tough.
The position that society's in. Or, you know, because it's, you have to get the kids back in school, but you want to make sure that they're not COVID positive when they come back in, because you
Right.
have a obligation to protect the children that have autoimmune deficiency or are susceptible to catching and get sick because they're, you know, or it's
Yeah, the underlying areas. That being said, you mentioned that the not closed because of staff shortage.
Did not have
We did
enough
not
staff
sub.
because of quarantining.
So, Risha, this is a question for you. If that happens and we have board members that are willing to step in to sub, can we do that? Is that legal? I mean, I would be more than happy to step in. Tammy just raised her hand at it.
Well, and
Qualified,
And-
don't we need to be certified?
yeah, we just get you emergency certified. It's something we've been talking about, just
So-
other staff that we can emergency certify.
It would certainly give the board members the knowledge of what's going on in the classroom before we start jumping to conclusions.
And we've been fostering conversations of other people, like, for example, me, you know, I'm fully certified to be a sub or
I
teach.
used to, but I don't think.
You know what I mean? It's like, but we have so many people within our organization that have the adequate certificates that might be doing a different role within even each site that we need to pull them. You know, and I think one thing that I must say with Mrs. Hall and Miss Richards is they've been like really flexible in this whole thing. Like what they've done in the last 3 weeks is really incredible. And
Yes,
we've been focusing on these conversations where once we started with, the way we started in the beginning was kind of how they were doing it the year prior, but it wasn't necessarily what was working for what we wanted. And now we're smarter about the quarantine. I mean, for me, what I think about is, and I know I've already told you this, so I apologize, but I was now the new thing that's going on in, you know, the COVID conversations around the state is the pediatric care. We have one hospital and it's already full, and it's not full. I'm not saying it's COVID, but kids are sick. And if you look at the map, of the United States and you look at the area that's in red, red means there is no child care facilities for these states. And Ours is this one little dot, and then we're surrounded, like kids are flown here. I went and met with some people at the hospital the other day. You know, and just, it's full. And yeah, we might just have 1.2% cases, but for me, the whole idea about quarantine is to, one, layer us with additional protections as an organization in a district. But the thing that it really comes down to is the second it's someone else's kid that doesn't have adequate care. I was talking to the hospital here, they have 12 beds available if they need to start opening up a pediatric wing. But they don't have the same skills because, you know, kids are different than adults. And so for me, this is the attempt, because I hear what you're saying about the freedom. I understand, I get it. But for me, if it's your kid, if it's your grandkid, if it's that 1%, then this is a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, we're putting the.
You know what I mean? Like, this does not matter once it's your kid that is in that quality care or without the quality care, or, and so for me, what I think about, just so you can get into my head a little bit, is we work really hard to prevent. We don't know a lot about this virus either, but in the last couple of years, I've been fortunate enough to work with staff that we've been through this. And the whole goal is to minimize, like, I don't want anyone to pass on our behalf. And not that, this is just, you know, what we call mitigating strategies. We look at multiple and varied strategies. We don't know if they'll work. We want it to work because all I really care about is the life of a kid, the life of a parent, the life of a grandparent. And it sounds dramatic, but it's actually, that's what I care about. And that 1.5%, like, once it hits home, then it really hits home.
Right.
And so that's the whole idea of this. And it's all of this is only based off of whether we need to use it. So
this is something we'll bring back and vote on at our next meeting, so
I'd
please,
like to add
time, thank you.
add something to it, and it's not really about any of the language of it, it's more about the communication part of it, so I don't know, we need to make sure that if we're quarantining students, that the school to our south now needs to be notified of quarantines. Because we got is charter school, it's not under our umbrella.
Right.
But that community does have children here, and so if they, like, say Monongah gets shut down, or Kemper or Mesa students, and they get sent, that school needs to know as well, so they can take any type of action they need to. Because last week they lost their 17 students got quarantined because. So we just need to make sure we communicate with them.
You
So
communicate with
I
charter
didn't
schools?
hear the first, charter schools, yes,
Yes.
they follow our citizens guide.
Well, not Quiga, it's not.
he's talking about the one in Toya on the
We
reservation,
need to communicate with them.
There's a new
They're their
school there.
own- They're their own thing.
like Keno, Washington and
Right,
Public
who
Health.
do I communicate, I mean,
Danny
what am I
Porter.
communicating?
Danny Porter.
No, I know who, but.
For instance, Manon or Mesa, you have a 14 class there. And there's students that live in Toya. And that school needs to be notified that there has been 14 cases.
We do notify them immediately the same day that there's quarantine or closure. They are notified. We actually notified the tribe and Toya, team in Washington.
Yeah, yeah.
That same day and then 3 times after that, every time.
And then their public health as well.
Their public health we
So-
talked to, but they were notified a minimum by me personally 4 times, so.
And they meet with us on our health meetings too.
And even though sometimes when we do communicate, sometimes we've already communicated it, but they don't even know that we've communicated it.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
You know, so but that's one of the things, we want to make sure that we are, you know, because their quarantine system, they do what is, their public health is 14 days. So we're 10. And so there's a challenge there. Because we are not as stringent as their nation and neither as the Navajo Nation. Both those tribes have more stringent criteria, 14 days.
And that's why we have to
That
notify
makes
them, because
right.
they notify their families that it's not 10, it's 14.
Yeah, and they keep it further and that, so there's a little bit
They're
of,
a closer family unit than we are, basically, so it needs to be.
and they're impacted different. And so we have to also be cognizant that their kid or their child is gonna stay home for 14 days
4
instead of
days,
our
yeah.
10. And yes,
Okay.
And I would just like to say, whichever way it goes, is that the quarantining, that we do kind of up our game and do our due diligence to make sure these students are getting an education on their
Right.
days out.
And I saw Risha take note on that one too. So moving right along,
One thing though, I did
we're
have.
gonna be here till midnight.
I
That's
know.
okay.
I did have a teacher contact me from Mesa when they were, they had quarantine kids. And she did comment that they didn't have the Toya kids come back. So I think we need to be very community.
Right.
We need to communicate better with our teachers to let them know that there is a difference in the
So
14 and 10
so the
because-
principals need to communicate
Yeah,
with their
yeah,
teachers,
I
is
think
what
they
you're
need-
saying.
Yeah, I think that there's a lack of communication there.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Do the stair step, chain of command backwards.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else? Okay, the next one should be fast. I put on there that if it's okay with you guys, that we cancel October 5th because we will have a CASB board meeting that evening. Otherwise, we have to come in early. Is that, and we'll have a regular board meeting, our IPP meeting, our CASB meeting, so I was saying, let's cancel our work session. Is, you guys agreeable?
Aye.
Well, we can't vote.
I'm just-
Don't vote, don't vote. No, I just,
It's not really something.
no, it's just
voted on.
saying that,
I would be in favor of that.
I guess what I'm saying is I told Risha we're canceling it.
Because that's locally here.
That's the same.
yeah, that's here. It's the same day, it's the same time, pretty much.
Everything's the
And
same. So we'd have to come earlier.
And do we have the IPP meeting that same?
month,
Well, we'd have it the same month.
Oh,
it's that month. So we'll still have 3 meetings
Okay.
Well,
together.
do we maybe want to see how much we would have in that work session? I mean, if we were to have just a 1 hour work session or something like that.
Well, I would like to
Right.
have something on as a work session. Either we keep it on October 5th and meet an hour prior to our regional meeting because October 21st through the 23rd, I'm at the Delegate Fall Assembly.
Oh, that's right.
And I'm gonna have a whole book of resolutions
That's
that I'll be
right.
voting on. But there's some that's very controversial that would really like the board's weigh-in of which direction to vote. And that's gonna need to take a work session. So either we do it on
Okay,
October
so
5th or we
CASB,
do it October 19th.
CASB meeting starts at 4:30.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
okay.
we won't be able to do it
Can
then.
you send us those resolutions in the?
Once I get the book, I can give it to Deborah and she can make copies and send it on the 19th.
Like,
19?
email you individually,
Sure.
our way in our.
Yep. That'd be fine.
Okay, so do you want to come in early on our board meeting and do the resolution? So come in at 6?
But it starts at 4:30.
No, this is our
19th.
regular board meeting, our regular.
Oh.
Regular board meeting, make it a 6 o'clock board meeting start time and do a work session on it that way. But still get the booklet to you ahead of time so you can look through those resolutions, but
And it should be on the CASB website when you get it, where
right,
you can go through it too.
Yeah.
So
that'd be good.
So let's move it to our work session at 6 o'clock on the 19th.
Okay,
Okay,
that will be
is
good.
that okay with everybody?
Sure.
Tammy, will that be an action item then later on the regular?
No, it's
just
a suggestion. It's a work session.
There won't be any action items on it.
Okay. We'll just
They'll give me the
give our
nod.
opinions on how you
Yeah.
think we're going to vote.
Yeah, because I'll make the vote official up there and for Collins.
Okay. E, C, oh, no, B, D. I'd already crossed it off.
So yes, we are canceling
Athletic
it.
department, and parent.
Yes.
Well, indeed, Mr. Jenkins was supposed to be here to discuss this,
He
but
was.
He was.
I know. I don't know. Do you know where he?
Did he
Is he
go
next
the
door?
other-
I don't know. I thought he left. Well, I mean, I just turned around, he wasn't there, so I don't really know where he went. 'Cause he left where he was, but just so you know, we did, meet.
Yeah,
Oh,
he's gone.
yeah, so I apologize for that, but he was supposed to, speak on behalf of this, but, we have met, I have met with Mr. Chandler in regards to this. A lot of the athletic concerns, you guys have received emails and copies of the emails as I've communicated with this parent along the way and other parents, but a lot of the things that have been provided to us are kind of historical. They're from the past, so we've met as a group to move forward and to, there are some great points made that we're fixing. And then there are areas that have already been fixed and it's like, okay, this is done, so let's go on. So we've set up some things for for winter sports. And so I just wanted to make sure that this was on the board so that you know that we have been working in regards to problem solving.
And I did go talk to Risha at one point and tell her some of the issues that were brought up had been dealt with 2 or 3 years ago. So
Well, and whenever you hear things,
it was a concern then,
right,
it definitely was. The school was working on it, but it was quite difficult.
and when you hear things, let me know, because if I can solve it between now and next 2 weeks from now, I like kind of having, in a sense, non-events. So if things are showcased us where we have to react, it's harder than being solution oriented. And I like to be as non-reactional as possible. I'm not saying that this situation is, in a sense, reactional. I just think sometimes, I have to demonstrate we've done this, and now we move on. And then something else will happen, possibly with the same family, possibly with a different family that we have to articulate in a different way. But I think the whole goal is to not keep things kind of in open status. It's kind of like check the box. So
What about the crow's nest? I talked to you about that. You were going to check with Ray?
I have not yet, but I will.
Okay.
Because I think that was Thursday, right? Or was it
Yeah.
Friday that we talked?
We talked,
Yeah,
whatever day you sent me.
One of those days.
I know. Well, last week was kind of,
It was,
yeah.
so if you can talk to him about. costs.
Yeah, I will make sure, I will reach out to him again. So, thank you.
Stacy, I guess we'll discuss that later. Okay, CRT. I think we have a resolution in our packet. We have 2, if I believe, is that not correct?
Well, board, as you look for that resolution, I had presented one at our board meeting last, and so did Assistant Superintendent Liz Richards has also supported, provided one. But what we've done, we've kind of cut and pasted and put it together, and we've come with a final resolve. So it should be in your packet tonight.
Okay.
Okay.
Got it. Yeah, it's in there.
So if you want to read through that real quick. Or I can read it out loud.
Why don't you read out loud, because we have another.
All right.
Yeah.
Resolution opposing principles of critical race theory. A resolution of the Board of Education of Montezuma-Cortez School District RE1 declaring its official opposition to principles of critical race theory. Whereas racism has no place in America's society, and especially in the Montezuma-Cortez School District RE1, and whereas nothing in this resolution shall be construed to restrict any expressive activities protected under the Constitution, including academic freedom or student political speech, and whereas nothing in this resolution shall require any staff member to violate federal or state law, and whereas the Board of Education affirms its commitment and expectation that teachers will rely on the Colorado academic standards as the authoritative source for the content of instruction to provide a comprehensive education on America's history that neither sanitizes its past nor denies the possibility of moral progress. And whereas public education properly designed includes age-appropriate critical thinking about the history, philosophies, and structures which comprise the American experience, including pertinent instruction regarding the founding ideals of our nation, as well as the history of racism and inequality in America. And whereas it is consistent with Montezuma-Cortez School District RE1's moral compass to use respectful teaching approaches to give guidance on how to use the cultural knowledge, prior experiences, frames of reference, and learning styles of ethnically diverse students to make learning encounters more relevant to and effective for them. Now therefore be it resolved as follows. Montezuma-Cortez School District RE1 will not use principles of critical race theory as described below as a curriculum for classroom instruction, with the statement the Board of Education reiterates that neither schools nor instructors shall assign individuals or groups of students to participate in class or complete assignments based on their racial identity. Schools shall not engage in racial bias or stereotyping. Be it also resolved that district leaders and staff shall not promote the following principles associated with critical race theory in Montezuma-Cortez School District RE1 classroom curricula: race essentialism, the assertion that race is the most important identity; collectivism, the assertion that group identity is more important than individual identity; accusatory characterization of individuals or oppressed according to their race. Be it resolved that Montezuma-Cortez School District RE1 will continue to embrace and implement the tenets of our vision and mission, the cultural compass, the strategic priorities, and how we approach our work and how we treat each other, adopted this day of month 2021.
We are free to discuss this. We are not free to vote on it.
No.
So does anybody have anything to say? I would like to say thank you for collaborating and doing this.
Thank Ms. Richards for her due diligence and working with me with it.
One typo is John Schudemeyer to be Jack.
No,
No, it's
his real
John.
name is John.
His name is, his real name is John.
His nickname is John.
Nobody.
Ask them about that.
been alive, huh?
Well, it says Jack right there.
Good catch.
No, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. I'm
No.
sorry, yeah, please.
I do have like an update on some things that we've been doing, if you would like that.
Can we do this resolution first and then do
Please.
that one? Because I want to address that also.
Yes, that's.
So does anybody else have anything to say about this resolution? Take it home, chew on it. We will vote on it at our next board meeting. Mr. Parr, you're on the floor.
I'm catching up.
He's going to come around. He likes to exercise bicycle.
So I just wanted to provide the board with an update of basically of things that we've been doing in response to this particular topic. So what you have before you is basically a rundown of our discussion activities that we've had. Thus far, on Thursday, August 26th, we commenced a community curriculum review committee. Our objectives there are to review current in-use English language arts material based on the content of the future board resolution that you have in front of you regarding critical race theory, and to gather and provide information and feedback for the purpose of advising the Board of Education. Our members in attendance were 7 community members, 1 school board member, 3 classroom teachers, 1 teacher support staff member, a principal, and our superintendent. The discussion began with a brief history of the acquisition of Wit and Wisdom as the primary instructional program for delivery of English language arts curriculum or content for K-8. Additionally, we discussed the timeframe for Wit and Wisdom implementation. We discussed the language of the board resolution and presented to use as a framework for determining if CRT is present in currently used content. Materials were presented in both electronic and hard copy fashion for committee members to review. And discussion ensued regarding those materials, at least the initial phase of a discussion. Some of the committee members that had previous access to our Wit and Wisdom materials identified areas of concern with the Wit and Wisdom program. Those areas of concern were that principles of CRT were being embedded throughout the Wit and Wisdom program, namely racism, promotion of racism, and the characterization of individuals as oppressors. This also includes inappropriate content for various ages and age groups, whether it's vocabulary or content. Other areas of concern that were expressed were dark and unpleasant material not suitable for children, and concern over strict use of teacher guides as vehicles for the above stated concerns. So those were some of the areas that were mentioned. I should also, and I didn't include it in here, but there's also concern with educational gaps as far as instruction, particularly at our primary levels, for reading instruction, vocabulary, that type of thing. The teachers present at the meeting discussed how the use of resources, the teacher editions, serve as a guide for helping teachers deliver content, but are not used exclusively verbatim, and that teachers pull what is needed from the guides and discard what is not. The conclusion for that particular activity is that this is an ongoing conversation. Not all of our committee members that were at that meeting had access to Wit and Wisdom prior to the meeting, and were given access, so they would have an opportunity to review those materials. The committee will be meeting again this Thursday, September 9th, to further discuss the findings of all members once they've had a chance to review those materials. The second step that we have taken last Friday on our early release day, we convened meetings with grade level teachers to seek their input on materials. So district grade level teachers were asked to meet as grade level teams and discuss the CRT as it relates to the use of Wit and Wisdom ELA program for our school district. Each grade level team was facilitated by a building principal or an assistant principal, meaning like 5th grade teachers all went to Kemper and one of the principals there facilitated that conversation. So they were able to meet as grade level teams. Teachers were also provided with the language that was used in the forthcoming board resolution in relation to CRT in the school district as a foundation, while also being asked to form collective thoughts about the concept as well. And then I've listed the questions that were posed to the teachers. The bulk of the packet that you have are their responses. It was a little challenging to synthesize because they were in various places, but I wanted you to have access to those so you could look through them as you draw conclusions and come to thoughts about where you're thinking about this topic. So, again, really, what I'm presenting to you are just the things that we've done thus far. Knowing that committees are continuing to meet, and we will be also recommending that committees continue to meet, not just beyond this, but into the future, so that we can collectively have decisions about what it is that we are using for our kids. So this is not kind of a one-stop shop thing, but in relation to this particular conversation, these are the actions that we've taken thus far. And as I said, our community committee will continue to meet. We meet this Thursday, and we will be discussing further meetings. But also know that the information that we glean from that committee will be provided to you so that you guys can make your best decisions possible.
What time is your meeting Thursday?
4:30.
4:30, thank you. Okay, I watched a video. Very eye-opening. And I'll say that I was devastated on what I saw and heard. And I was going through, all my sticky notes because I didn't have any paper. I left at home. But I mean, at kindergarten, it's teaching seahorses having sex. I'm sorry, that's not appropriate. It talks about them twisting their tails around and then the female fertilizing the eggs and transfer them to the male seahorse, and then the way he gave birth. And that's a kindergarten. I have a problem with that, a major problem with that. So after I finished the video, and that's just one small example. I mean, if I am reading this, I see some teachers had some issues too. So I went on the CDE website, and we were assured as board members that this met all their criteria. It is the very bottom thing on there. It's the lowest ranked piece of material there is. I really think that it's time for us to explore something different. Now that I know it's out there, that I did not read the material, but I did. I did go in and I did look at it. I did not look at the reading material. Shame on me. I'm a language arts teacher. I went in and looked at, are they teaching writing? Are they teaching grammar? Are they teaching spelling? And I could not see that. But then after talking to our curriculum director, she assured me it was, and she gave me a few examples, just randomly pulled out of a book on where it was teaching writing and expressive writing and stuff. So I went ahead and voted for it because I did not read it as closely as I should have, which is bad me. So I will tell you, I do not like wit and wisdom. After watching the video, I did send the video to Stacy and Tammy and Cody because they're on the CRT committee. I don't know. I'll leave it up to them if they watch it. And
I did watch it, and I've been reading 2 of the books from the 5th grade, and the 2 books that they talked about in that video. I saw the same thing. I've reached out to some of the 5th grade teachers, and I 3 teachers who have different perspectives, and that's the one thing that I think we need to really realize is reading a book is all about perspective.
Oh, yes.
And the way I perceive something, it's no different than any other perspective that we have. One of the teachers that I reached out to had the same perspective as the video shows. One of the teachers who I highly respect did not have that perspective of the books, didn't at all. And she taught 5th grade last year. She's not teaching 5th grade this year. The other one, once I visited with her about it, she kind of stepped back and was like, yeah, I can see how you can do that. I can see where you can get that perception of it. She said, I think that we can teach the same kind of, she likes the curriculum of wit and wisdom. She doesn't like the choice of books necessarily. And she says there's books from, what was the last curriculum we had? I just lost that.
Success for all.
Yes. She said there's books there in that curriculum that could be taught with the same curriculum as Wit and Wisdom is offering, the actual core curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's the issue that we have. It's not necessarily the curriculum. it's the books that were.
But you have to be an experienced teacher to pull different books in to do.
Correct. And that is exactly what she said too. She said some of our, we're so young
Mhm.
in our teaching that some teachers don't have that ability to do that.
And that's why we need to get our
Yeah.
salaries up.
And that was, a concern that was noted by
Yeah.
committee members as
Yeah.
well.
Well, and
But,
if we're looking at something like that, let's say, where it's kind of a swap, that's when we get our leadership teams to work, and it becomes part of our planning process, like we shift a little to give teachers the time to prepare.
Yeah.
Because the thing about having a curriculum is to have a viable and reliable piece of information that each one of you, if you're a fifth grade, if you're attending a fifth grade, it should imagine which school you're at, you should be getting the same equal access to a public education. So the goal is that what's happening in your fifth grade class is kind of happening in your fifth grade class, not always the same, because, they're all different, but it's not that I'm a teacher and you're a teacher and you're a teacher and we're teaching a curriculum, but everyone's getting different access to different things, because then it goes like this and you can't quantify whether you're providing a rigorous academic curriculum for all kids. We can't say why your classroom is doing better than your classroom if we're using different resources.
Correct.
So the goal is to have a viable and curriculum, but we would want to document what we're doing, and we would want to keep it so that if our teacher leader teams are making decisions, we have it kind of like on a curriculum guide that's time bound. So this book is going to be read here so that next year we can build on it.
But Risha,
You
I'm
know.
reading in here and what I'm reading is they weren't asked. This was just put. up.
Right. Well, that's
So that's a concern too.
right.
We didn't even ask our teachers.
Well, can I say one thing though?
Sure.
In all honesty, you guys can put blame on yourself about this curriculum, but it's my job to be the expert. And it's Ms. Richards' job to be the expert, and it's Mr. Parr's job to be the expert. We're supposed to do this work for you. And we're supposed to give you information that we believe is our expert opinion, because we are the experts in this field, along with other people that do our jobs. So I really don't believe that you have to read everything that comes
Well, I
at
agree.
you. So I just have to take that off of you
I
for
agree with
1
you
second.
on that.
But I don't necessarily know in reading some of the comments, because we had a conversation last week. Well, we've had more than one, but it's the thing that's interesting though is the more we look, the more we see some things that we might have. I call it filling in the blanks, which I don't like to do. I don't like to fill in the blanks. I heard the curriculum was adopted. I had filled in the blanks because I assumed it's been vetted the way we all have vetted curriculums in the past. And so
Not sure.
it may have been done. I don't know. Because it's the past. But now we have a duty to look at it thoroughly and make our opinions. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Chris.
No,
I'm done.
the same educators that brought this to us still teach it. Principals still work here. They vetted it. They saw a need for it, and that's what they wanted us to adopt. And in our policy BBA for powers and responsibilities, we are not educators. With educational plan and appraisal, the board is responsible for acquiring reliable information from responsible sources, which will enable it to make the best possible decisions about the scope and nature of the education program. And then we are responsible for acquiring appraisal of it, and seeing how it's performing.
But we did not do that. We did not do our due
Do what?
diligence. We did not seek to get the appraisal and stuff. We just kind of took it because we were told that we had to pass it because they needed to get it ordered before they ran out of money.
But that was the middle school curriculum.
Yes, it was, because this has been,
Piloted.
Yeah.
you know, I know.
We're talking, and now we're talking.
And
about
I don't
it.
remember this. Tammy, do you remember the elementary coming to us?
Yeah.
It
I
was
wasn't
piloted
around when
from the
elementary-
conversations I've had with the principals. It was piloted.
I believe it was pilot before I came on.
So,
The only thing I know about Wayne Wisdom is the middle school
Right.
that we approved just with Jeanette Allen and stuff, and so
Yeah.
it's something else.
well, right now we're doing elementary. Tammy,
If
go
I
ahead.
can just, and that's right, you're right, we govern by policies, we have that policy there. However, watching this video on Wit and Wisdom's creation and how they work, they took experts' advice on the curriculum. They vetted this curriculum nationwide. And through the vetting, they weren't even in the top 20 choices. But somehow along the line, Wit and Wisdom came up and floating like it was the top choice. And now it's coming through nationwide of listening to experts taking whatever rubric that they used, and this came forward for whatever governing force that Wit and Wisdom is doing behind great minds, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But we also need to provide what Dr. Vanderway says is something viable and rigorous curriculum that is going to support to increase our student achievement here. I do not believe at this time and juncture, from what I'm reading, from what I'm hearing from the committee, we don't have that. I'm okay to scrap Wit and Wisdom. I know it's 3 weeks into the school or 4 weeks into the school. It's not timing correctly, but we have a committee, we have experts that be able to really look at it now, because we're now looking as what can we do moving forward. We can't look at what happened in the past. You know, we've got to move forward. We have the information before us. What can we do?
Okay,
That's
now
my point.
I want to clarify one thing, and then I want to ask Ms. Richards. I want to clarify, we are not out to do away with diversity, because it's very true that we have a horrible past. We also have a wonderful past. It needs to be taught as such, but we keep talking around, and I've heard from everybody. Do you have something that you would like to say? Because you are an expert in this.
I've vetted the material quite in depth. I had Mr. Park give me access to the material online. And I went into it with probably a persuasion of my own. So I had to set that aside and realize, okay, what are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? I will tell you that the weaknesses stood out so glaringly from an educational perspective. I'm not talking about the CRT undertones or anything like that. From an educational perspective, it's a language arts curriculum. Language arts covers reading skill, writing, spelling, vocabulary, and grammar. Those are the language arts skills. It has no reading program embedded in it, none. There's no instruction for K-3 on reading. It's only literature. There's no how to read. How can a language arts curriculum not teach K-2 how to read? Secondly, there's no embedded grammar program. There's sporadic and isolated grammar just spattered throughout, and there's no cohesion to it. They don't learn about a noun and spend days on that. They spatter a noun and they use the literature to reinforce that. They don't, it's just a very poor way to teach grammar. So they scored zeros on reading instruction. They scored very low on grammar. They have no spelling program embedded in the program. They will pull out vocabulary words from the literature, which is a common practice, and use those as spelling words. But children have to learn to spell phonetically based on the individual phonemes of a word, based on the blends, the diphthongs, all of those things. They have to learn phonetically how to spell. There's none of that instruction at all. As a matter of fact, some of the words in kindergarten that are spelling words are words like racism and words that are just too hard for them to phonetically even sound out. They don't even know how to read. And then, so there's no reading program, there's no grammar program, except for sporadic mentions throughout the curriculum. There's no, and there's virtually non-existent grammar program in middle school. There's no integrated writing program other than prompts from the reading. So basically what is touted as a language arts program is a literature-based program only. So what we've had to do, Mr. Parr explained to me that we've had to supplement a phonics program, which most of our schools use sax and phonics. And to have a phonics program that's not integrated into the literature is substandard. We have to supplement with our own spelling program, which is different across the board. We have to supplement with our own, and also there's no penmanship program. So, and that's part of language arts. They don't teach the children how to write the letters. So we've had to supplement, and everybody wants different programs and some don't have one right now and they're ordering one. So a lot of them like handwriting without tears and others like different ones. But you have to have a common thread in your programs as well for those. So it's missing major tenets of a solid language arts program. So we need to call it a literature program because we're supplementing all the other elements of a language arts program. So from my perspective as an educator, and I have shared with Mr. Parr as well, and he agrees for the most part with all of that. And he shared that with me as well. It's a literature-based program, but we're supplementing heavily to make it a language arts program.
So should we not find a curriculum that we can use without supplementing?
We should, because it'll be better vertically
Now, then,
aligned.
when I went on CDE, they had a long list of different ones. And I picked out the ones that I liked because it's the ones that I was familiar with when I taught. That doesn't mean they're good now.
But to be perfectly honest, we also encourage people to supplement on their own.
Right.
Like when they're teaching so that they can save their craft.
As
So
I did too,
a
yeah.
curriculum generally, so it's a broad stroke. And no curriculum is perfect and no curriculum provides exactly what a community needs.
I agree.
But we look at the broad stroke and then we give people some of the opportunities to sway, because for years we've read books to our children, but the books don't really match the kids that we serve. So it's like we've swapped books out, like as a grade level team, we've worked together to pick certain materials that it's not applicable to the community that I lived in. And so, we still like to give people that leeway, of course, but, we can look at the website, see what the recommendations are. I might add though, right now is a really tough time to get teachers on.
Yeah.
The last thing I really want to do is say you have to learn a new curriculum right now, because I can tell you people are heavily impacted by this start of the year has been a really tough start of the year for a lot of the people that we serve. And so I can say that even from a district office, we've tried to go real slow because we're trying to be very cognizant for not only the workload that people feel under, the pressures, but then, everyone has a different story and we can sense, we work with people, we all have, been going into the schools and I talk to people and we've all talked to people and people are feeling a lot of pressures.
Oh, they are.
And HR sees it all the time and we're dealing with a lot of crazy things. And some of it is COVID related, some of it isn't, but COVID is kind of like here and then everything is right here. And so I think we just need to be very cognizant before we start changing something, because we really have to give people the adequate tools
I agree.
of how to teach the curriculum prior to giving them the curriculum. And a lot of this is just training. A lot of this is messaging. A lot of this is us working really hard to make sure, you can have consultants come in and teach a curriculum in 2 days, but then the teacher's sitting there and it's like, well, how do I really do this? And we really have to be thoughtful about the process and really break it down. So this is what your first 2 weeks are going to look like. And we're going to walk you through it and we're going to coach and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I just have to throw that in because I do feel a little bit of anxiety, just like for the people that work for us.
And that's your job. And I want you to know that I'm right there with you. I do not want to create hardship on our teachers. I also want to be clear that I do not believe in banning things.
Right.
So, just to throw that out, I don't want to ban the curriculum, but I don't want to use the curriculum. So I don't know where we'll go from here, but there's a meeting Thursday and
So this curriculum was piloted before you came on board. And the. but
And I don't-
the
it never came to
curriculum
us.
That we were supposed to read that was set on Jeanette Allen's desk was middle school.
Right.
Okay, so this has nothing to do with anything. This is more a performance evaluation of the Wit Wisdom that was piloted years ago. And so we
Well, and
have.
so did you look at the wit wisdom for the
And
middle
I
school?
think that the,
So,
Or did you-
so I mean, we're, you know, just so you know.
Yeah, well, let's let Liz talk
Let them
about.
finish.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's more to the fact that if we're talking about the elementary that,
Right,
and we're talking about its performance now, and if it's not performing up to standards, then
it's
we should be
done.
looking to remove it, but at the same time, we shouldn't be sitting here hanging our heads about not reading the curriculum for middle school when Mr. Pearson and his team and everybody else came to us and said, please.
and I think
So-
in their defense, I think they were just looking for standards and for alignment.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have that alignment at the middle school, and so they were looking at that. And the elementary schools had already been using it. I mean, I'm playing the devil.
Right, sure. No,
That's
you-
what
as
they
you
were
should.
looking at, and that's what, you know, they felt like it was gonna help them get to a baseline and an alignment for the middle school people that didn't have that because they had had such turnover and they
Well,
didn't have good
Okay,
alignment.
so Liz, Ms. Richards, did you look at the middle school curriculum when you were doing this?
I did, and I can see how they would gravitate to it because it provides, a curriculum is really the curbs in the road. And the teacher drives the car down that and stays within that guide and framework. And I can see how they really wanted that and needed it because they didn't have that. And if you read the research and the, what it talks about in the middle school curriculum on their website, I mean, it sounds fabulous. My personal concern is the content of some of the units, and maybe it's acceptable to the curriculum committee, and we'll see that. And some of the choices. I've told Mr. Farr, I gave him a list of some classic literature. Maybe people think it's old fuddy-duddy, but it's still classic literature. They chose a lot of contemporary authors, and the authors haven't been vetted over time. And so to throw out all the classics and introduce all the contemporaries isn't a very good balance for a program, but that's my opinion about that. I think that students going in will enjoy some of the literature exercises and activities. It gives the teacher some guidance in how to do that, but it's not strong in spelling, vocabulary, and grammar.
I have a quick question. How long did these teachers have this year to prepare with this new curriculum? Because it was like
Well, you're
Sherry
talking to
said,
new people.
it was, yeah, well, I mean, for the one that we had just approved, because we had to get it
Mr.
coming because it
Farmer,
was,
yeah.
you know, we got to get it coming. We were last on the list, you know, we're not going to get it in time.
Well, you know, when I came on in July, it hadn't begun yet.
Well, no, but the perusal of it,
Well, it was,
I can't read that from
you know,
here, so.
I believe the first trainings were late July. They had, a few teachers had like some hardware, or as teacher editions and some textbooks. But that stuff slowly came in over, you know, the month of August, so, but, you know, it wasn't ideal.
Okay, so
In that-
typically, how long would be an ideal timeframe to
Well, ideal, I mean, you're looking at probably what they were able to do at the elementary to a certain degree, which was have a piloting period.
be?
I mean, that would be the best way, where you have an extended amount of time where you're just working with it. It may not necessarily be what you're using at that moment, but you have opportunities to interact with it, to play, for lack of a better term, in kind of a sandbox fashion where, you know, and that was, I believe that pilot, I don't remember exactly, but I think it took place over a semester.
And what I might add is generally like when we've done curriculum implementation, let's say we're implementing wit and wisdom for August, we should technically have all the material and all the professional development lined up before December. So the teachers, the year before.
Wow.
So the teachers should be able to get into the curriculum. You start shifting the PD days, like early release days, you start shifting that to building what you're going to be teaching now. So this should, in my world, so I don't mean, I'm not being critical of anybody, but so we would have adopted the curriculum in June or May, and then now we would be purchasing everything and we would be lining everything up for next year. So it's more, it's a little bit laid back. I mean, not laid back. It's more structured and it allows teachers the time to learn a new curriculum, because these curriculums these days, or programs or whatever we want to call them, they're, I mean, you have your paper side, but most of it is not. Most of it is a guide that's all digital. And so then you look at our staff, the age of our staff, and digital fluency. I mean, we have a lot of different things that we're dealing with, like even how we communicate with parents by shooting a link of the lesson. That's there. It's not rocket science in a sense. I'm not trying to be critical, but teaching a teacher to do that with fluency and then teaching the other side of it, the kids and the parents and the grandparents with that fluency as well. Like there's a lot of moving parts, and really to honor whatever curriculum or program we get, we really need to be planning and giving teachers the adequate time to plan, to plan for delivery of instruction.
Okay.
And that really is what I'm hearing we might not have done.
No, we did not.
Perfect, thank you for that.
Thank
That was-
you.
I don't know if that's helpful.
That's very helpful.
That's, you know what that leads back to is one of our top three.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It's just that.
So- Yeah. Mr. Carr and Stacy and Cody and Tammy, are you guys comfortable meeting Thursday and pursuing this conversation?
I will not be able to be here Thursday. I have to take my husband to the doctor.
Okay, so, and then give a report back at our board meeting? Okay,
Is there any way we can do it a little earlier?
do what?
Is there any way we could do the meeting a little earlier?
Mr. Carr,
Well, it's at 4:30. I was trying, I mean, that time allows us to have some staff members participate. You know, let me
That gives me maybe
ask some questions.
30 minutes to an hour, so that, I mean, I
So
can
you're,
make it work for
you're
some.
you're looking at 3:30, is that what you're?
I mean, no, that just, I do have another appointment there. But I can attend it for maybe half an hour to an hour. But,
I mean.
That's about what it took last
year.
I do, we do need to like honor the folks that have already committed to that time, so.
I would kind of keep that meeting and then maybe we can look into other opportunities.
Yeah.
It's hard with all what our teachers do. It's hard for
right,
them.
it's hard for them.
And then I just have one more question. When we do have curriculum, and do they send out like addendums or, you know, yearly, like to kind of update? And so that's stuff that we would never have our eyes on, or is that?
Meaning like the companies or?
Yeah, well, it's
Yeah.
just like wisdom, and then
Right.
so they're gonna send some updates or add-ons or certain things to, and so that's something that we would never probably ever have our eyes on anyway, correct?
No, and generally speaking, most curriculums or programs provide addendums, especially if state standards, there was a shift quite some time ago where the state standards were shifting quite regularly. And so addendums, you know, it's kind of like our policy, how you guys get board briefs and stuff. It's a similar thing.
So we can approve a curriculum based on this, but then down the road, they can be slipping some things in that we really aren't aware of.
Yeah.
Or stuff that's not pertinent, or stuff that we don't,
Well,
I'm just curious.
I think,
And that's where our curriculum director comes in.
yeah, and I think moving forward, the idea of having a regular committee that looks
Thank
at
you.
these type of things, as members, community, staff, board members, having that arm on a regular basis, I think, I hear an echo in the other room. But having that will be vital to ensuring that, some of those things aren't like slipping under the rug for us.
Right.
Yeah.
So it sounds like, you need to have appropriate reviews of the elementary curriculum going forward, because you're basically gonna have to run with
Right.
this for the year, but you gotta have something to replace it by December to start training.
Right.
Right.
Well, instead of the life cycle of a seahorse, you can have the life cycle of a plant.
Absolutely.
Like that's what I used to teach when I taught kindergarten. It's like the life cycle of a plant. We didn't necessarily do the life cycle of a seahorse. So
And that's
there's
a,
opportunities to just,
yeah, but let's read about the tortoise and the hare, on.
okay.
But I like Yeah, age appropriate.
Well,
Committee.
One thing that I might recommend as well, in addition to your resolution, is that you consider the idea of if this is a change you're wanting to make, because it's going to take us time.
Yes,
So we need to know.
but we also need to have the community vet it,
Mhm,
teachers vet it, the board vet it,
right,
and the
I mean-
administration's gonna be involved in from day.
Well, and we'll
Right.
do it a different way.
Yes, thank
well,
you.
but I'm not saying, approving of what we're jumping into right away, but really having that decision in place that, hey, maybe we do plan to make a change. So
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Any more discussion, questions? Okay, Stan.
Mr. Clark. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. It seems like you always get beat up on, doesn't it? I'm sorry.
It's okay.
You
Cycles.
inherited this.
Yeah, we're not at you. Stan, was that Chris and Tammy? Did you guys talk to Canyon City or do anything or?
I organized a meeting with Canyon City's Assistant Superintendent, interim superintendent, director of curriculum, that was new,
Yeah.
and the high school principal. High school principal and the interim superintendent is who I listened to in 2019 on student graduation, how to get students, our high school graduation up. And so as I was listening to that in 2019, we were moving forward as a district going into our homegrown initiative, which we have. I thought, oh, this is really great. This is a way we can kind of shake things up, because right now, currently, since 2019, they provide at least 60 courses to their high school students, 9 through 12, a whole array of, from really shaking up their curriculum to meet the standards, but in such a way, like, for example, the horticultural class, which you can tell I can't say big words tonight. They looked at how that could meet science, math, English, grammar, whatever vocabulary. They were able to meet all those standards by providing this program, but also came from it was internships. And that's what our homegrown initiative is about, is providing internships with our high school students. And so even though I went in with the thinking of maybe this will help us with our STEM, only thing it came out of, and I had invited Dr. Vanderway, Ms. Richards, as well as Mr. Parr to join this conversation. I facilitated and let the experts talk to be able to join. They gave us some websites of what they presented to us in 2019 for that side of the table. I think I only printed 10, because I didn't want to run back up and say, Deborah, heck, can you? These were provided to us during our meeting. If we can pass one back to Mr. Carr too. Basically, the presentations that they gave us in 2019, this was during CASB, is one of the breakout sessions though. So Jack Schoenemeyer, myself, and Lori Hockness, our superintendent then, sat in this breakout session and just came away with just huge excitement of how we can do similar by providing internships for our high school students. Now, this has nothing to do so much around STEM, but it could in some way. So I think we met for about an hour, a little bit over an hour and a half, close to an hour and a half. But just from the conversation, just of the excitement of what they were able to achieve, what they were able to learn from, to what didn't work well, what did work well, and that they are so open to sharing with us. So in my mind now is, you know, how we can use this and give it to those individuals that are working hands-on with our homegrown initiative to see it grow, because that's part of their requirement to graduate is they have to write a paper.
Yeah, they had to have a project and
Yep.
it's, so the, mind you, they've been doing this for 10 years. So we would have to start with it like a bit back. Because they just started with single internships.
Correct.
But now they go all the way back and they start with kids when they're younger. So now they have a track system in their high school where you join and let's say you want to become a veterinarian, or you join because you want to do something else and you start on that track as your freshman year. With the mindset, well, kids change their minds, but it's also a good lesson on how to be perseverant and how to move through things that you might not necessarily agree with. But there are times that you can change that track, I believe, if I heard correctly.
Yes, yep.
But the thing that's cool is they look at local opportunities for kids to internship. So originally they had a very narrow focus on internships for kids, but then over the years it's grown, and they said something like they had 123 businesses, and they're like, look at Canyon City. Do we have 123? Well, shockingly we do. And so it's just kind of cool because kids can find their niche and kids can find a place. And then you have like, what I really like, I love internships for one. I mean, this is a little bit of a sidebar, but when I was a little girl, I wanted to be a vet. So I volunteered at an animal shelter when it was still legal to volunteer when you were like 8. So I did that like 8 to like, you know, I moved out of that town when I was in 8th grade, and I volunteered the whole way through and realized I don't want to be a vet. I have nothing, you know, I love animals, but I love people more. I want to invest my life to people, not to animals. So anyway, but I think the internship allows not only kids to have skin in the game and to learn how to communicate with adults and to understand real life things, but who else is in the game then? Our community, the people that we serve. Like, how can I say that we are serving, you know, Montezuma-Cortez School District RE1, we're here to serve you, but we don't let our kids into your businesses and we don't let them see the reality of life. Like, that seems a little sheltered to me. And I think we start slow to go fast. Like, we start with, you know, who do we start with? And that's something we would have to decide, but I really don't think that it's a bad thing to foster positive relationships. Will it always work out great? No.
Sounds
But
like
then-
a retreat and build on this.
Right, you know, but I think that there's a lot of great things and we can learn from these people who have built the structure, and it won't exactly work.
Right.
You know, the same. You know, we don't have jails here. We don't have, you know, we have a different space. And so we don't have as many river companies, but we have hunting companies. You know, we don't have as many, you know, we all have our niche. And so I think it's a great opportunity, and I think it is part of STEAM. I think science, technology, engineering, and mathematics is in everything we do.
Yes.
You know? So I think it's a great opportunity, and I think it's a fun way to at least start with something that gets our kids working with the community. And we might have some time, because right now, you know, with the COVID, we don't know if that's something We want kids in places. If we do, great. If not, but I think the most important thing for me is we just need to plan adequately so things start out robustly. And our homegrown initiative, like I met with the folks that are doing that, and it's amazing what they've done. And they're growing something super solid. So if we use them as a tool, I don't mean to use people as tools, but if we use them as kind of like a resource of this is what you've done and you've done it wonderfully. How do we expand it little by little so that we ensure that it's sustainable and maintainable for not only the kids, but kids that are doing it or having a good experience, and then slowly add more,
I think ultimately, like, the model that they used, well, we wouldn't be there immediately. The portfolios that those kids walk away with are really impressive. And I know, from being a principal and a teacher in the past, one of the hardest things is to have students buy into their own education.
Right.
And one of the great stories that we heard was one of the administrators talking about his own child, as a freshman, I think it was, just being completely vexed about, all right, which one of these am I gonna pick? Because he was so interested in so many things,
Right.
but.
So he chose two.
Yeah, he chose two, he was the only one.
So, I mean, I think any opportunity that we have to make that a reality, I think will yield amazing benefits.
And it comes with some good Bible PD for the especially secondary teachers. A lot of times they get stuck in a rut in their education. They use the project-based learning model,
Right.
which is proven in secondary schools to have greater outcome and achievement for students. So they did a lot of professional development and project-based learning, which then jumpstarts the kids for their internship, which is the real project-based learning because you're on the job. So
Right.
And they write a paper at the end. Is that what you said?
it's
Their
a
senior year?
capstone project.
Right.
It's not just a paper, it's an actual project that
Yeah.
they've
So-
done throughout high school.
So I'm thinking that the kids who have to write a senior paper, well, all seniors have to do it, write their senior paper. This would be a great substitute for that because they've been working on it all year. And then there's none of this, and it's because I've gone through this with grandkids. Oh my gosh, what can I write on? Oh my gosh, well, what are you interested in? So.
Yeah.
So that ends that stress. You've been working on it for 4 years.
Yeah, one of the most thrilling moments as an educator was watching one of the girls go through this type of program in her senior year. She was awarded the patent for inventing a prosthetic leg for a goose.
Yes.
Oh
And they
my.
actually made it out of their 3D printer.
Yeah.
But her whole capstone was the process. And she had to share it as well as write a paper about it.
I mean,
She was so passionate about it, it just moved me with emotion.
yeah.
She integrated all the skills.
So let's start this tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I think it's time for us to get moving here.
yeah.
I'd love to thank you. Anybody else have anything to say? And I've got to say that Chris is the one that built the fire under me on STEM. So
So many.
there's so many things. And so, you just kept sending me all those emails, those links and stuff last summer. And I'm just, okay, I want to do it. I want to do it.
The world now.
Yeah, it is. So I want to thank you, Chris.
Absolutely.
Okay, number G, policies and discussions. Did you guys read them and did you see any changes you wanted to make?
Well, the first one, file AC, I just had a quick question because it talks about, according, let's see,
The first page?
yeah, the first
paragraph?
page and the first paragraph, about halfway down. I don't know, because things can be, there's always that little gray area. Accordingly, no otherwise qualified student, employee, applicant for employment, or a member of the public may be excluded from participating in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to unlawful discrimination under. Okay, so member of the public may be excluded from participating in. maybe we need to add in there where applicable, because if you're volunteering in a PTO or something like that, but no, you're not gonna be able to participate in all of the activities that are out there for all of these people. But some people might read that and go, well, I'm a member of the public and I want to participate in, and they really don't have that authority. So I don't know if there's something in this that's protecting us from that. Or if there needs to be, because people get crazy out there. As far as, you know, I'm a part of the public, but, so I don't know if there's something like, if there's something in here that protects us from like them trying to participate in something like, I want to be the wrestling coach, I'm gonna participate, and it says right here that I can do this, and you can discriminate against me. As a volunteer, even, you know what I mean? So I don't know if it's going too deep or if it's protecting us. I mean, so if we put something in there where it's telling us, you know, where applicable or where, or some kind of verbiage that kind of throws out that like, no, you're not allowed to participate in high school or grade school activities. I mean, you can go on the what is it, the field trip with the sign, you know, with the background check or whatever, but I mean, I don't know, like I said, if that just leaves it gray or if there's something that already protects us from that.
See what you're saying.
I feel like I read that a little differently than you, in the sense of like, if members of the public were doing something, you know, you can't discriminate based on certain things. Not necessarily like if it's not open to the members of the public, like you're not discriminating against them if you say no members of the public.
Right, so that's why, that's what I'm saying, like, I don't know, are we being.
Gotcha. Yeah, I just think I read it a little differently, but.
And I think I understand the intent, what it's saying, you know, like if you're volunteering somewhere somehow, but it's also saying maybe excluded from participation and be denied the benefits of or be subject to unlawful discrimination of any district program or activity on the basis of any program or activity.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, do I go real deep with that, or like I said, it being protected somehow?
And that's something we can look into. We didn't address that. That's not what we changed. So in the end is everything in red is what we wrote, but we can look into that line. So just so you know,
Okay.
because I see the line that you're talking about, and we'll just read through it and see what do you all think about what Sherry is bringing up?
I think she has a valid point, but I think she's going awfully deep.
Well, that's what I'm saying, like anymore, like people will read through that and go, oh, it says right here, I can do this.
I think we are protected though because of non-discrimination, equal opportunity, you have to be in protected classes.
Yeah, right.
Okay,
And, you know, so unless we're saying, no, you can't because you're A, B, C, D, or E. Can't do
the reason you
it.
can't is because you're not you cannot participate in this, not because of your race or your
Right.
anything like that,
Well,
okay.
we do have job descriptions that, you know, sometimes job descriptions, the goal is to wean in a sense, or direct people where they're going to be based off of certain qualifications. But this is the one thing that we didn't have is the law has just changed. We didn't have the compliance part, and we're still, like today we had a discussion this morning at around 9-ish, I think, but about, you know, this just came into fruition in February, and so the processes and procedures that we had in place, we don't have anything in place. And so this is the beginning of it, because we're, like we brought up, I think, with the community college, with the audit that we have, we are working on that audit, and this is part of fulfilling the requirements that we need to do in order to adhere to our non-discriminatory equal opportunity compliance. That's why we have the compliance officers in 2 languages. And we've gone through all these things because we've identified Ms. Eldridge and Ms. Richards as pieces of the parts, but it has to be in all of our information as well. So,
And the language that was existent there
Mhm.
was provided by CASB and then vetted previously, and you did pass it. But what wasn't added was our non-discrimination policy of verbiage, like I was just saying. So the language that's used and isn't shown in red as changes has already been vetted twice by legal.
Okay. Okay, ACR 2. Oh, well, ACR first, okay. All right, ACR 1.
I was just curious who, does each school have a compliance officer or is there just one?
we just have one. And so one of the things is we communicate with the schools that if something like a non-discrimination or equal opportunity case happens, or let's say we are on our ACR, so this is complaint and compliance process. So we're also educating our principals that if something happens, the process is different now. And so you don't handle it as a principal. You know, normally the principal handles, you know, the goal is that they handle everything, but now they don't. Now they have to go to, you know, we have people that we have identified that they need to go to in order to ensure that everyone has a fair handshake, because I believe, generally speaking, when a policy is being fixed, it's because people haven't been provided equal opportunities. Or, you know, one thing I brought up with our discussion today is sometimes when women have sexual harassment cases, they're not valued the way it is for a man. Or when men have sexual harassment accusations, people are like, suck it up, you know, like, you should be loving that. So it goes both ways. And so I think the purpose of this is to make sure that we have a process in place where we have people who are not biased, who are making clean decisions, who are adequately trained and who are trained on this. And so that's what we're working on right now.
Right, and we have full and complete investigations, which have to end in a resolution, which is actually something new. We still have cases open from 2019 that have never been resolved. So we're working on those, but it's a full investigative process.
And do we know wherever it says insert number, do we know the number for that?
For what?
On the same one, it'll say like, but no later than like, you must, the compliance officer must confer with the aggrieved individual and or the alleged target of unlawful discrimination or harassment as soon as is reasonably possible, but no later than insert number.
Insert numbers, yeah.
So I'm just curious, there's a lot of insert number.
Right,
And
they've just adopted the policy. You guys forgot to make it your own, so.
So we have to insert our own number?
Okay.
Right,
correct?
normally, I can just tell you from having done these policies not too long ago that our legal advice, the complaint, and on page 3 of 5, the compliance officer on the bottom must prepare a written report containing findings and recommendations as appropriate, submit the report to the superintendent within, and we put 60 calendar days.
This is the one you had a question on, Cody, the last time we were here, which was 60 calendar days. And so, go on.
It typically goes faster than that, but they recommended giving yourselves more than less. In case
Yeah.
you.
So most of these
Say,
insert would be
yeah.
60 calendar days for most of these.
Following the compliance officer to receive the complaint for 60 calendar days following the termination of the informal resolution.
And we'll go through that. And if it's 60, we'll let you know that they're all
Okay,
60, because generally speaking, they will all be,
the same.
yeah, I just want to make sure that I read through it all before I say they will all be the same, but I believe it's all 60.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that's a great question, because I don't think I even
That
know.
makes sense. You don't want to rush it. Okay, ACR 2.
Pretty much guessing most of these are just to add you, Ms. Richard, on here.
And the seldom, yeah.
Yeah, Ms. Aldridge, okay. It's just changing names in the policy.
Mhm.
Basically, we've been.
And we tried to go with just putting position, but Dr. Van der Way was looking at it closely, the compliance requirement, you actually have to name it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we wanted to keep it more vague because just in case we have turnover, we don't have to change this immediately, because that's something that we will have to stay. You know, it's hard when you have 4 binders of policies. Remember that, you know, Ms. Richards, but it's something that we have to do. It's because it actually says name, slightly irritating to me, because I'd rather just put that this is the district office, but it does make sense too, because when people are in trauma, and if they're making a sexual harassment claim,
They want to find it, yeah.
they would rather, I mean, I would rather have them just go straight to the person that they need to talk to. So I'll just have to put it, we have to put it on a checklist or something, like policies need to be changed because direct names are on. That might be good to start now.
It says,
While we're here, this is a work study session. Might as well start.
Okay, does anybody have anything else on that one? Okay, ACE. Non-discrimination on the basis of disability.
No, I'm good.
Just added Liz and, just add Liz. Okay, ACE2 is the form. Did I skip ACE1?
No, it was,
ACE1, oh, that's just putting those on there again. ACE2 are forms, and it adds Biz to it. ACER, non-discrimination on the basis of disabilities, and again, that's adding Biz to it. Okay, everybody comfortable with it?
I think the only one we added, Ms. Aldridge to was just AC.
Right, the policy, ACEs, we added her. Okay, is there anything else to come before the board? Anything to add to the next board meeting on the 21st? All right,
Or just let us know, yeah.
yeah, I'll be meeting with Risha next Tuesday. I adjourn this meeting at 10:12. Are you ready?